Welcome and hello for the second time today, right? I hope you guys are all doing very, very well. Let's see, very quickly subscribe, thumbs up, whatever it is that you need to do. I appreciate it. Okay, so what are we doing? Well, we're watching the Krama Mama drama that's playing out in Austin, Texas. uh, Alex Jones is on the hot seat. So he is answering to the Sandy Hook parents that he uh, said were crisis actors and basically devastated them as if they were not already devastated from the deaths of their children. And so the family of Jesse Lewis, they brought a case of defamation um, against Alex Jones, and Alex Jones has been found guilty. It's a done deal. This is not We're not watching the phase of guilt or innocence. It's done. He's guilty. What we're now watching is the penalty phase. The family has asked for $150 million. Alex Jones has filed bankruptcy. But this jury, they will have an opportunity to award anywhere between $1 to $150 million to the family of Jesse Lewis because Alex Jones said that they were crisis actors. The reason that I ultimately made the decision to talk about this case on my channel is because I think, especially like when you think about Critical K, she is facing lawsuit for a little bit different thing, not really what she said on her channel. Although I think that case with Christian Andreacchio's mother, Ray Andreacchio, I think that may be still going on. And that was directly related to what she said. She basically called Ray Andreacchio a drug dealer and that she was just giving out pills to anyone. And there was no reason whatsoever to believe that at all. We've got other YouTube creators that find themselves legally, under the gun because of what they said. Had a lot of people that were upset with me because I stopped talking about Barry Morphew. And I said, as long as the man has charges, as long as he's been arrested, then of course it's perfectly appropriate to discuss the case and talk about the evidence against him. But the minute they drop charges and he walks, he's no different than me and you. So we may not like the way it works, but you might like the way it works if it was your child or it was you and you had been wrongly accused. Then you'll be glad to have that whole innocent until proven guilty by jury of your peers, So in court. So that's why I think this Alex Jones case has merit. In no way am I supporting Alex Jones. I think there were some people earlier that were a little freaked out that I decided to play it. I am watching this because it matters. It gives us insight. If you know the story, the claim, like with Owen Schroyer, the claim was, that he's just simply acting as a commentator. His people hand him a news article by Zero Hedge. One would assume Zero Hedge, as a journalistic endeavor, that Zero Hedge would have done due diligence and verified the facts that were in the story. Owen Schroyer basically reads the article out loud on the YouTube channel, well, whatever their website, reads the article out loud, and then there was inaccurate information in it. And so his defense is, hey, it was a news article. We assumed those facts were checked. I wasn't the writer in this situation. I wasn't the journalist. And I assume that Zero Edge did their due diligence. Well, how many YouTube creators would say exactly the same thing? That the things that they cover on their channel, they're getting from news websites, they're getting it from articles in newspapers, and you would just assume that those publications did their due diligence, right? I know for one little fact related to Joshua Allwine, I ended up with 5 phone calls and waiting all day long, and now it will have been the whole entire weekend to get a second verification so that I can say it out loud on my channel. And the reason I have to do it this way is because nobody else is covering the case. It's not the information is not getting published anywhere. So I have to make sure what I'm saying is accurate, so I myself don't find myself in trouble with sitting in a court of law. So it's going to be very interesting to watch this case, see how it plays out, and the implications that it might have for social media commentators like me. The other part of this is the judge is a character. She takes no prisoners. Okay? She is not messing around. No foolishness in her courtroom. Don't mess with her jury. And for God's sake, whatever you do, don't chew gum in her courtroom. So she's a character. So even if you don't know who Alex Jones is, you've never heard of Sandy Hook, it's funny testimony to watch because the people that are involved in this have bigger egos than Alex Jones. I mean, it seems like it's only appropriate that these guys have huge egos because basically it's, Alex Jones' ego that's on trial here, I think. I think he just wanted something sensational. He wanted people talking about him, and he lied to try to make himself bigger than life. And that makes him a big target, right? So he's paying the price now. So we'll see how it goes, okay? Y'all ready? Everybody, hello. If you're ready for me to start the testimony, put a 1. Yeah, they definitely pulled the cancel culture thing. Certainly. Oh, welcome back, Mike McCormick. Good to see you. I remember you from last night. Hey, Tennessee. I guess you've seen all the terrible flooding in Kentucky, huh? Awful. Really awful. Nana Flower Power. You go, girl. Hey, Snickers. Welcome. Shalimar, did you get some food? Hi, Muffin Tom. Cinnamon, hot. Hi, everyone. I'm listening, but not in the chat. Welcome, Yvette. Glad you're here. All right. So I think, Patron Angel, welcome. Good to see you. Let's see if I got everybody. Critters, Muffin Top. Yep. Sketty Nona. Critters was number 1 today. All right. Kindness for all. Thank you for being here, Kindness. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I will start the testimony. And, I'll probably lose more subscribers. It breaks my heart. I wish people didn't act like that. So if you know anybody who might want to help and subscribe to my channel just to show support, I would appreciate it. Okay. All right. Let's get started. These people that are involved in this case, all of their personalities are, it's a funny bunch. Yesterday we did watch the opening statements. They've now had their break, and so now we're back.
Before we break.
Oh no, it's right before their break.
Gum in their mouth. It's clearly stated on the door. There is no eating. There is no gum in this courtroom.
No gum, damn it!
I'm talking, sir.
I got in trouble.
The number 1 rule in court, fair or not, is when the judge is talking, nobody else is. Even if I interrupt someone. There is no chewing gum. There is no soda. There is no eating in this courtroom. If I see it again, I'll have you removed.
She is not
There is no
fun.
recording
She's
of
not a
any
fun
kind
judge.
of the YouTube feed or the proceedings in this courtroom without prior written permission signed by me. No photographs, no audio recording, no video recording. So,
Hey, Judge, I'm
not
chewing
taking
gum
away
right now.
everyone's phone in the room, but if we find out that you're doing one of those things, you will be removed. There is no talking to, talking in front of, or approaching by anyone of my jury. If somebody does that in the courthouse, they will be removed until this trial is over. Just want to make that very
I'm
clear to
telling
everyone.
you,
We're
she
gonna
is
break
not
for lunch. It's
playing.
noon. We're going to break until 1:30. My jury can go ahead and head on out.
My
Before we
jury.
leave me right now.
I want to talk about me. Want to talk about I. Want to talk about number one on my me, my what to think, what to say, what to do, what I want, what to hear. She is not a fun lady. She is stern. What do y'all think? Is she stern? Her lips are lovely. I think she got a little bit of work done. Not quite as much work as the Nicholas Cruz judge, but
right,
yes, she looks lovely.
Um,
I'm loving your earrings, girl.
First on the United Way, it was certainly not my intent. I think I said that the United Way received millions of dollars in donations to support the parents and the families of Sandy Hook. I don't think that's
Muffin top.
The evidence would be that the United Way took in all that money. I certainly didn't mean to insinuate that they turned around and gave it to Mr. Hudson and Lewis.
Oh, but you did insinuate that, sir.
The money came in, it was spent on all sorts of things. I'm not going to get into it, but there's lots of allegations that it was misspent on other things by the United Way.
I'm not really sure what relevance it has to this case at all.
I think it's relevant because part of we expect to hear from the plaintiffs that Mr. Jones' statements were hurtful to them because it negated their experience, their tragedy, the loss of their child. And we believe they're going to have an expert who's going to testify. We think that the fact that the whole community was supported throughout this period by everyone is relevant to determination of
No farting or bark. That's a high order, Cinnamon Hot On. He may not be able to make that rule.
Is relevant. So they're going to call an expert, and I expect that the expert's going to use examples and say, when somebody has their experience of trauma David, it re-victimizes. That might very well be true in the case of sexual assault or something where you reach out to an authority figure and the person says, I don't believe you that you were raped. But our case is distinguishable. There was tremendous outpouring of support for the families to help them. And that's relevant to the amount of mental anguish that they suffer.
Your Honor, I would just like to say that if he felt that a collateral source issue of benefits was relevant, he was obligated under the standing order to approach the court and secure a ruling before putting it in front of his jury.
You would be
So
correct,
it is not
prosecutor.
reasonable to think that these plaintiffs have been part of the recipients of millions of dollars, which is exactly what Mr. Jones said he was going to do and why he brought it.
This judge is not going to be happy.
Which I certainly did not intend to. It wouldn't be in a 2-second throwaway comment after saying they got cards.
Clementine, are you the chewing gum monitor? We need a monitor in here, damn it.
The issue of net worth, I said nothing about Mr. Jones's net worth. Mr. Frankston made deplatforming part of his opening statement. To say somebody has lost millions of dollars doesn't say anything. I mean, deplatforming, he brought that into this trial, right? And there are consequences to deplatforming. They're painfully obvious. And one of them is loss of revenue.
Because I asked them if they were ready to start the trial, Sheila. Thank you for being here, Sheila and Clementine.
Has already been punished. These comments were clearly to imply evidence of network. That's what our motion is on. By putting this into the trial, the only way I could rebut it is, for instance, putting in the amount of revenues for the years that he listed up there. We said, 2016, we lost, we said we lost these millions. We have evidence of where the revenues were, and they're $165 million over a couple of years. And this jury here is getting that these tested, which is going to prejudice their punitive, the compensatory damages, because they're going to say you can't get collected stuff. And this has radically reshaped this trial, because this jury has been given a story of this, that they should have sympathy for Jones because he has lost so much, and now he has lost everything.
I agree, kindness for all. Absolutely.
We're bound for the rest of the trial on that. This jury's not going to return the correct verdict.
And then on the apology,
Was the $1 million first, Your Honor, or the apology?
no, you already responded to his argument.
No, the sanction, the $1 million sanction.
Oh, yeah, Muffin. She is definitely telling you who's in
Court
charge.
of Appeals, I think.
She got all those big
Court of Appeals
egos that are in there. She's
Friday. The sanction is
setting
on
up some
Monday.
healthy boundaries.
Check overnighted from
It's okay,
Infowars,
Sheila.
For what I believe to be the correct amount is $966,000. Put on it the names of all the plaintiffs. I instructed my client, his father, particularly to put on it the name of the law firm and the name of the plaintiffs, and had it delivered to their offices. Instead of cashing it and saying you owe me another $100,000, Mr. Bankston called me and said, the check's not legible, it's for the wrong amount, reissue me a new check. Okay, so I called my client and they are putting a stop payment on the old check. I think they already have, and they're coming up, they're gonna do a new check that has everything typed on it. I thought I was gonna have it today. I'm sure I'll have it tomorrow. I mean, there's lots of good faith. $966,000 is not peanuts. So Mr. Bankston did cash the check and said,
Your Honor, I could not have cashed the check.
"Did you try?"
The check
No
was,
sidebars.
the check was completely illegible, and it showed that it was written to the wrong clients. I cannot take money from these plaintiffs that is owed to them.
I don't know why the check would be written to anyone other than the attorneys, and to go into their account and then be dispersed properly. That's the way we do things like this. It's always written to the attorneys. Look, the shucks, I just made a mistake. I don't know quite what I'm doing. Enough of that, okay? You know exactly.
I'm
what
with
you're
you,
doing.
Judge.
You're very competent.
Good call.
I don't appreciate you pretending to not be. Get the check here tomorrow, made out to Mr. Bankston's law firm in the correct amount. If you don't know what the correct amount is, send Mr. Bankston an email and ask him what it is. If you
High five,
disagree with
Judge.
his response, let me know before we leave today, and we will have a conversation about it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
She's irritated.
I don't want to open up the whole trial with regard to net worth, because we went through that a week ago.
Yes, we did.
What I heard Mr. Reynal say was InfoWars lost everything. Now, I know Alex Jones is InfoWars, and InfoWars is Alex Jones. That's been established in this case. The same goes for Free Speech Systems. But I don't know that we need to completely open up net worth to address that. But I do think it means you're going to get a little more leeway to talk about those subjects.
I don't
You can
think
respond,
it matters what his net worth is. I think they should assign the amount
United
that they
Way.
believe is the rightful amount and then fight for it later.
I mean, I don't know the
I don't
answer.
think it should, his
You can
worth
talk
should
to me.
affect what they think
I'm
damages
not
ought
going
to
to
be.
decision on that without knowing a little bit more about it. Let's put
You
it
know,
that
if he's
way.
broke,
We might need to have a
who cares? If they want to
But I
give the
don't
whole
know-
150
I don't know
million,
enough
give it.
about the facts on that.
What is y'all's
Ask
opinion?
myself
Do you think his
questions
net
like
worth
meeting.
should matter? What do y'all think? I think it's about the damage of sending a message, right? I am back, Diane. Welcome. And this judge is ornery. She's ornery. But I like her. And she's interesting.
I do not see in your answer anywhere that you plead 730033 A3.
Your Honor, many of the apologies are contained in the videos that are available.
That's fine, but that's not how you make an affirmative defense on damages. You have to plead it. You didn't plead it. You've already argued in your statement to the jury that he's been punished and shouldn't be punished more because he's apologized. So what am I supposed to do with that now? You weren't allowed to do that.
I think we're fixing to have another all shucks moment.
So this statement I'm being asked to read to the jury. Mr. Reynolds, throughout his opening statements, claimed that Mr. Jones has, quote, apologized repeatedly, unquote, for the statements he made against the plaintiffs. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this statement is hereby stricken from the record, and you are to disregard this statement as it has no evidentiary value in this case. Any public apology, correction, or retraction of the libelous matter made and published by the defendant Alex Jones. Did you want to include free speech systems?
Sure, that's yes, Your Honor.
I mean-
We should, just for clarity for the jury.
May not be considered as evidence of mitigation damages in this matter for Texas law.
Okay, can I ask the court a question?
I don't think so. You can write a note to your co-counsel, but it's one attorney per proceeding section.
Wow,
argument, witness.
she's a trip. I love it. I love strong women. Oh, shucks. I forgot the law, Judge. So cute.
I would add, Your Honor.
It was very funny, Critters.
Nothing was said.
You want me to add that to this proposed statement? No? Okay. Are you making an alternative suggestion of statement I might give to the jury? I'm not sure why you just said that.
My fault.
He was,
Wow, she is so tough. She has had enough of men, right? I love the whole gum thing. No gum allowed in my courtroom. Judge Judy, there you go, Clementine.
I mean, I think that this proposed statement is true and accurate.
Yeah, if we could see the stalk, that would be awesome with this judge, right? Stalk,
I'm
she's
willing to
crazy.
add,
I'll be right back.
as a reminder, what the lawyers told you in their opening statements is not evidence. It's their expectation of what the evidence will show. I think I would add that before the statement proposed by Mr. Bankston to provide a little context for it, and not after, when it might be misconstrued as contradicting what I had just read them.
I would rather not draw more attention to it. I would find the statement as produced.
You're fine with the statement as produced by Mr. Bankston? All right. Then I will read that. Any other motions? Did I
Your Honor,
deal
the
with
only-
all of them except for the one that I'm thinking about?
Exactly. The only other thing I would ask alternatively, Your Honor, is if we're not gonna open up bifurcation, I know you told me you have some leeway on this issue. The thing that I think I would like to do is not try to introduce net worth or expert opinion on that, but simply introduce the evidence, the revenue information that we have through it, so that we can show that the loss of millions is counterbalanced by 6 and 5 million coming in.
And then what are we doing in the second part of the trial. It's
Well,
already
then I'm
on
gonna
in.
have to, right, I hear what you're saying, but I'm only just gonna put on the revenue. And so in the second part of the trial, I'm gonna put on an expert finesse work, and he's going to have to extrapolate from what limited data we have and his own expert background to establish from both revenues and from what before was operating expenses should be, what today the net worth of the company should be. This would be more of an argument about what the revenue of the company was at the time Mr. Reynal has implied that the company was losing revenues.
And I am here to report that Alex
Which
Jones
means that
did
can be
declare
straight
bankruptcy for InfoWars. I believe it was on Wednesday.
I could make it not. I have a witness who might come on today who I might be the person I want to do that through, but you can do that tomorrow.
Okay, because what I'm gonna do is read the transcript. For both of those issues, actually. Was there any other motion, Mr. Banks?
Yeah, I would love to see this judge against Letitia Stock. Absolutely. Be great.
I was expecting something else, so we're not dealing with that.
Oh, if you wanted to go back in chambers and deal with that, yes, we can.
Is there something you're planning to ask me to do? Or you just want me to know about it?
Yeah, it doesn't need to be on camera.
I understand,
Right,
but
yes, I'm gonna ask you to do something. I'm not sure if you're gonna do it.
Oh, must be because he got flipped the bird.
all right, we'll take that up later. I don't wanna make the jury wait longer. All right.
Such a great judge, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I'd
All
love
right,
to
so
see
that's
her
still we're ready for
handling the
discussion.
Chadster and the Love Goddess. Yeah, absolutely.
Is anyone invoking the rule?
Defense would have broke the rules on here.
So we'll do that once I ask for the first witness, then you can do it. Well, they need to stay in here until I swear
Oh,
them in.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so if they're in the building and they're gonna be a witness, they should be in here now.
Mr. Banks, can I have this card over video?
And we'll bring them all up, I'll swear them all in, and the rule.
Oh, don't show the jury. They're not allowed to show the jury, are they? Maybe the jury sits on the other side. I don't think so, though. What's the HTTN video? I agree, Clementine. Absolutely. Apologies are worth nothing without repentance. Absolutely, Scottie Nona. Yeah, that would have been a disaster if that jury had come walking out while the camera.
Do you mind doing that? Okay, thanks.
Help to the no. Oh, they got a new one up, Nancy. Yeah, I didn't look right yet. I usually look when I'm getting ready to go to sleep at night.
All right.
Judge, you're not even looking at your jury, Judge. You need to show some respect too. Be a good example.
No, otherwise I would not be.
You've been on.
Oh, yeah, you wanna go do it right now? Thanks, sorry, I didn't realize. I didn't know you were doing it.
That's Jesse Lewis's mother and father.
So sorry. I'm sorry.
All right, you may be seated. We'll let Ms. Matrix get through.
Sorry.
No, you're keeping everything running. Are you kidding? Thank you.
Right.
All right, welcome back from lunch. I do have a quick statement that I'm going to read from my jury, and then we'll turn to plaintiff's side for their first witness and some other things. Mr. Raynal, throughout his opening statements, claimed that Mr. Jones has apologized repeatedly for the statements he made against the plaintiffs. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this statement is hereby stricken from the record, and you are to disregard those statements as it has no evidentiary value in this case. Any public apology, correction, or retraction of the libelous matter made and published by the defendants Alex Jones or Free Speech Systems LLC may not be considered as evidence of mitigation of damages in this matter per Texas law.
Yeah, but
All
you
right,
know,
now we're ready
critters,
to begin
that is not
again.
happening. There's
Looks
not even
like
enough
we've
money
got
to buy a
little,
pizza,
council
much
change
less
there. So, Mr. Ball,
sue
you have a
50
witness for me?
people.
I do, Your Honor. The plaintiff's called Detective Dan Juice in San Francisco.
All right, thank you.
Detective
Invoking the
Juice, bring on the
Your Honor, at this
juice.
time, the defense would invoke the rule.
All right, I
Oh.
need every witness or potential witness who is in the room. So I need the attorney.
They're invoking the rule, guys.
I don't think that we have one in the room, Your Honor. Oh, wait, we do.
What
We
does
have
that
experts.
mean?
I'm sorry, we have experts.
Experts are not included. Any fact witness. We have two. Could you both come up here, please?
Invoking the rule.
You can just come, just stand in front of me. You don't need to.
Wonder
come all
what
the way
that
up. Just stand in
means.
front of me.
Invoking the rule, guys. Maybe we need a rule in our
All right,
channel.
just stand right there, and then I need your
AJ is
names for the record,
apologizing
please.
because
Sir, go
he's
first.
being sued.
Jewis, Jewis.
Thank you, ma'am.
Daria Corpus.
Daria
Corpus.
Karpova. All right. I need each of you to raise your right hand and be sworn in. Do you solemnly swear or affirm, under penalty of perjury, that the testimony you're going to give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Sir?
So help you God.
Thank you. Lower your hands. You have been placed under what is called the rule.
The
Which
rule.
means that it will be necessary for you to remain outside the courtroom while other witnesses are testifying. You are not to speak with each other or with any other person, including the parties, about this case, except by permission of the court. You may, however, discuss your testimony with the attorneys in this case. You may not and are not to read any report of or comment upon the testimony in this case while under the rule. Any witness or other person violating these instructions may be punished with contempt of court. And it may
Welcome,
result
Boyd.
in my
Good to have
striking
you
the
tonight.
witness's testimony.
Hi,
So, Ms.
Walker.
Karpova, this time you're not testifying, so you will be instructed to
Invoking
remain
the
outside the
rule
courtroom.
allows
And,
prosecution
Mr.
or defense
Juice,
to request
Juice,
witnesses
if
be
you,
prevented
are not
from
released
hearing
from
the
role after your
testimony. Thank you,
also will
Nancy.
have to remain outside the courtroom.
I
You
just want
do
to. I just want to
understand
be
this
able to
rule
say,
so that when you are called to
excuse me,
testify,
mods.
you are
We are
available and
invoking
you can
the
hear me.
rule.
Oh,
So critters and
so
Diane, y'all need to
this
come up
time,
with a
Mr. Cooper, I
rule.
need you to go out in the hall and remain there.
A very
Counsel,
expensive
It is your
lesson, cinnamon.
obligation to inform any and all other fact witnesses that the rule has been invoked and the
Ooh,
effect of
that
the
sounds
rule and any
serious.
violations of the rule. As any other witnesses arrive, you need to advise me
Me's
so
or
that they
mom?
can be sworn in and placed under the rule formally as well. Also, if they come in and they sit down and you don't tell me, then they may not be allowed to testify. So you need to make sure everyone knows that. Do you each understand that?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, sir, you have been sworn in and you may come and sit on the
We need a
witness
rule,
stand.
guys. I want to be able to invoke the rule.
You can sit down and there is water in a pitcher and cups if you need them. You should not need to lean into the microphones. It should pick up your words. I'm gonna give you a few instructions. I don't know. if
His
you've
haircut
tested before.
Is
It is not a
throwback
conversation.
50s, isn't it?
It is a question and answer process. And to that end, you need to allow the attorneys. to
Come
complete
on,
their
Judge.
questions
Let 'em
before
have
you
a
begin your answer, Even if you
conversation.
think you know what they're going to ask you.
Conversations are so
Let
much
them
more
ask the
fun.
question, and then they'll let you give the answer. If you hear the word objection, you need
I
to
have a
just stop
rule
talking until I
invoking the
indicate whether
craziness on
it has been
YouTube.
sustained or ruled and you can proceed or not. Do those things make sense? Also, sometimes people will answer with nods or uhums, things like that.
Uh huh.
Those don't make for a good record,
Uh-huh.
so I'll ask that you
Yeah.
answer all of your questions
Yeah.
out loud with
Uh-huh.
actual words. All right?
Uh-huh. Mhm.
Wonderful, thank you. Go ahead.
Mhm.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Uh-huh.
Detective,
Yeah.
good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
If you would please introduce yourself to the ladies and
As
gentlemen of the jury.
mortified as I was over this
My name is
trustee, is
Daniel
it just
Jewis,
me, or does
and
it
I
feel a
am
bit immoral
retired Connecticut
for
State
parents to be
Police
fighting for a payout?
And Mr. Jewis, it's
It's
my
not seeking
understanding
justice
that
for
in
those.
2012, you were the lead investigator for the Sandy Hook school shooting that occurred on December 14th.
I do get your
2012.
point,
Is that correct?
Voight.
Correct.
I think it's more
And
about
that
them being
school
called
shooting,
crisis
sir,
actors,
resulted in 26 total deaths, 20 of which were children between the ages of
being
6
called
and 7 years
liars,
old.
I guess, right?
If you would please,
Dayglow
Detective,
green.
explain for us what your involvement with that investigation was, what your duties were.
I wonder
there.
why they didn't go after Halbig.
Sure. As a member of the State Police Major Crime Squad, we're responsible for responding, investigating to anything that they designate as a major crime, which obviously the Sandy Hook shooting was. I happened to be
Uh-huh.
off that day, so I was called in like many of my coworkers. We were initially told that there was a reported shooting at a school. Back in 2012, our initial thoughts were not.
It was a horrible
for an
day,
active
wasn't it?
shooter or a
Absolutely horrible
mass
day.
shooting. By
I'll
the
never
time I got
forget
to
it.
The Newtown Police Department, there was already some of the survivors at the police departments, and we had a pretty good confirmation that there were some fatalities in the school. There was an enormous response, obviously, of first responders at the school trying to stop the threat and then save lives. We then immediately went into our investigative role, set up our command post operations, and started working with 26 different agencies that ended up responding and helping out with the investigation.
Detective Jewis, how is it that you came to be the lead investigator in charge for this particular school shooting?
Exactly, Curtis. I remember
Sure, the first
exactly
part of
where
that
I
is
was
just
when I
how
first
state
heard it.
police
I remember
actually
what I
became
was
the lead
wearing.
agency.
It's
Because
very
you'll see that in
strange.
Many of these other incidents, there's either a federal agency or the local agency, and that was because of some previous work that we had with the FBI in particular, where there was a clear understanding that
No, I'm
were the
with
ones
you,
that
Voight.
handled
I hear
homicides.
you.
And they were very supportive role, but that this being a mass homicide was something that we were going to handle. Newtown itself is just a mid-sized police department, and just couldn't be expected to handle something like this, especially because so many of them were part of the immediate response and obviously had some other needs at that point. The Major Crime Squad that's our premier detective bureau in the Connecticut State Police, and homicides is what we do. The office that I worked out of, which was manned by a sergeant and 6 detectives, was about 10
Epic
minutes from Sandy
version
Hook.
of
So
GoFundMe.
we were going to be the main office to investigate that. And at that time, I was the senior detective in that office. And so it just made sense that they ended up putting my name on the paper as the lead detective. And that's what it was. It was just a name because this was such a massive case that there were so many people that played key roles, but they had to identify somebody as the lead investigator.
And how long did your role as lead investigator continue, Detective?
I don't see an end to that role.
So you consider yourself, continued today, the lead investigator on Sandy Hook?
I do. Absolutely. I'm retired, but I still consider myself that kind of
One of the, if I remember correctly, didn't
We're
one
gonna
of
talk a little
the
bit
investigators
here in a moment
die?
about your
Didn't he get
involvement with
killed?
the parents, with the community. But before I do that, I kind of want to go back a little
Like,
bit.
I think he was
Talk
riding
just
his
a little bit about your
bicycle
background
or.
so that we kind of have a foundation.
I'll have to look that up. I can't remember exactly
Okay.
now what.
In 2012, could you tell us where you worked and lived, Detective?
At that time, I was living in Waterbury, Connecticut, which was probably about 30 minutes, 25 minutes from that Sandy Hook.
Is that where they found
community.
that terrorist
Then I
in the
was assigned
boat?
as a
No, that was
detective in the
Watertown.
Western District Major Crime Squad, but my office was actually out of the Southbury Barracks, which was about 10 minutes from there. I had joined the Connecticut State Police in 1998 and made detective about 4 years after that. So at that time, I had about 14 years in the Connecticut State Police. And I also had done 20 years in the Connecticut Army National Guard. And I retired from there as a...
It is, yeah.
Now, where you told us that you lived back in 2012, would you consider that, Detective, in or around the Newtown community where the Sandy Hook Elementary School was located?
It is. I mean, Connecticut is only so big, especially compared to a place like Texas. But, we divide the state almost by whether you're east of the river or west of the river. And so I certainly consider myself to be part of that community.
Pretty small community overall.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very
I
wealthy
understand that
community.
I think from what you've told us, you kind of hinted towards it, that you've recently retired from the force. Is that correct?
Correct. I retired officially in March of 2020.
Congratulations. Hope you enjoy your retirement. It's my understanding, though, that in your retirement, you're also kind of busy right now, aren't you?
I am. Yes.
And what are you taking your time up with as it concerns employment and your continued involvement?
Sure. So even before Sandy Hook, I had worked with a coworker, and we did outside training for his small company. That was leadership and team building training. And then after Sandy Hook, there was a lot of requests for sharing of lessons learned, both from the leadership side and the investigative side. And so then that led into my development of another private company called the RAC Academy, which stands for Response to Active Killers. And so
Wow,
now with
Uvalde
retirement,
could have
I still
used
do
that,
leadership and
right?
Team building training under Team Training Associates. And then I am fortunately, but also unfortunately, very busy in today's world with the Response to Active Killer training, which my team and I do. And we consult and give training to the full spectrum of people that are involved in active killer incidents, from obviously law enforcement and dispatch, but also I do a lot with school safety and businesses and houses of worship.
Yeah,
Everybody that
Uvalde
we elect to
definitely
target.
needed that training, no doubt.
And kind of bringing
Oh, I'm sorry,
bringing
critters.
together your experience and how you're applying your experience now with active shooter situations. I don't want to talk about the kind of the shooter itself, but more take you to what you learned and what you did in this Sandy Hook elementary school shooting as it concerned management of
Me
and,
too,
your time
Sundown.
with the
Absolutely.
parents and the families after this took
I
place.
didn't know that kindness for
Sure.
all.
So both in our response and in support of those families, and now it's a large part of the training that I do in the consultation is many of our clientele expect to learn some advanced investigative techniques to handling these types of things. And the reality is it's not required. That's not really there. Law enforcement investigates homicides, and these departments that I go and I work with, they're already good at that. They already have the skills of collecting evidence and doing interviews, and it's going to take them a lot longer, just like it took us, and a lot more resources. So they're going to need a lot more help with that. But the things that I like to concentrate on are the things that caught us by surprise, the things that were off the radar, the things that we never received training for. And actually, when it comes to Sandy Hook, it's the thing that I think that we made the greatest impact on. And it's the thing that we spent the majority of our time on. And that is the support of those families and really doing deep dives into, even though we can't bring back their loved ones, how from the moment that it happens, from the moment that we're involved, how we can support them the best that we can.
I think one time you had told me in a previous discussion with you something about a butcher block piece of paper. Does that bring to mind some of the involvement that you had with the families there? And if so, tell us about it.
It did. So obviously these events are so unique.
He's really
And so
cute,
our
isn't he,
response, I
critters?
don't mean from
Yeah,
the
kitty dog
response
is
on the scene
barking.
itself,
Her
right?
dad
Yes,
just
that
came
was unique,
home.
and we didn't need to get into that.
So they have to
Our
play for a
support
little
of the
while.
families cannot roll into our traditional model and go by our traditional policy and procedures, because otherwise we would have to tell those families things such as, it's an ongoing investigation, we can't share information with you, and we'll tell you things once this is all over, and we wouldn't be able to return belongings or actually walk them through the scene until we've come to some type of resolution to this case, which obviously with cases like this are going to take a long time. The first time that came to light was,
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the narrative.
The what?
Well, let's try to break it up just a little bit.
Sure.
Um,
As it concerns the work that you did with the families afterwards, were you personally involved with the families who lost loved ones? One of the 20 children who were murdered in
Critters,
Sandy Hook school
does she
shooting,
have COVID?
yes.
and personally involved with them. How did you make that one of your priorities in your investigation of this?
they
We
gave
quickly
me
identified that our top
hydroxychloroquine
priority in this investigation was, the first question we always had to ask was,
and
what is best for the victims? and the victims'
Z-Pack.
family? That became our immediate top thing in every action that we took before we brought it against a policy or even what state law was. We went and asked ourselves, what is in the best interest of
Oh,
those
God,
victims
Critter.
and those victims'
You know,
families?
I
And that
think-
just put us on the
mine was
mindset
too, because
that
I had
we are
a
here to continue
killer
to
sore
support them
throat,
in the-
and I didn't learn until just a few
And I
days
think I asked
ago
this, but I wanna make
that
sure.
the sore
Did you
throat is
become
common
personally
with the
familiar
new
each and every one of
new
those families
variant.
that had to go through this tragedy, Detective?
They did. There was a couple families that we didn't have direct contact with out of 26 families that we were dealing with. But initially, we as in the investigative team had assigned an officer to be assigned to those families to carry out some duties with gathering some initial information. For
That's very
outside
cool,
investigations,
Voight.
because they
I
lost
like
their
that you
loved
guys
ones.
were so
Eventually, that role
proactive.
transitioned over where myself and another partner of mine were the direct contacts with the family to meet with them individually, in groups, and to answer whatever questions and continue to give them support. That still continues today, and so that thought of what's in the best interest of the families, that's something that we actually put
Good
up on
for
bulletin
good
board.
for you, Voight.
We hung that in our
It's
command post,
wonderful.
and we hung it in our office, and it was just a constant reminder of what our goal was, because our shooter was dead, so we weren't preparing to go to trial. We knew that the best thing we could do was to support those families.
And
Yeah,
wanna
I
capture
had
something you said there. You said that still
hydroxychloroquine,
continues today. Is that one of the
a
reasons, if not the
Z-Pack,
main
'cause I
reason
had,
that you consider
a lot
yourself
of
to still be continue
fluid
your
in my
your
lungs, and
duty
they
as
were
lead
afraid of the
investigator
pneumonia,
this tragedy?
and then I had prednisone, or
And
what
the families that
methylprednisone.
you had personal involvement with, you have had personal involvement with the Lewis and Heslin family, correct?
I have.
And you're aware of our client sitting in the room here, Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis, yes?
Yes, very much so.
Those are the
I'd like to thank
parents.
you on their behalf for being here today. You don't live in Texas right now, do you?
No, I don't.
That's right. Where'd you fly down from? Where do you live now, Detective?
I'm still in Connecticut. I just relocated to East Haven, Connecticut.
Okay, well, thank you for being here.
And
So,
Critters, she
in
may
your
she may
very
need something
detailed
like
involvement
Lomatil
with,
if they move her to the
this track-
hydroxychloroquine. It can be
Get
hard on your
vaccinated
tummy.
and get paid. Up to $1,700. We are currently offering the COVID vaccine, flu
tragedy. I want to talk about December 14th, 2012, the day of the shooting, and a few days thereafter. With that time frame, can you tell me about how
Or
many
at least to have
agencies,
some
government
Imodium at the
agencies,
house,
first
Critters.
responders, however else you'd like to define them, initially responded to this tragedy?
There was, we recorded that there were 26 different agencies between state, local, and federal that were not only first responders there, but also came and were part of the investigative team. We never took an overall count, but I would estimate it was probably between 400 and 500 law enforcement personnel.
And that was going to be
Wow.
my next question. So 400 or 500 law enforcement personnel, we're talking about, had access to that scene within the day of and the days thereafter. Fair?
Correct.
That's
It was either access
amazing.
directly to the scene, which was certainly in the hundreds, or reported directly to us at the command post and started taking investigations.
Yeah, it's
If
crazy,
you could,
Muffin.
I don't want you to have to tell me exactly all 26. You might be able to, but highlight some of the agencies for us, if you could, that responded to it in that 26 we're talking about.
Sure. The main agencies were the FBI, federal agencies. ATF helped out with a lot of the gun tracing. The DEA, the U.S. Marshal Service, the U.S. Postal Service was extremely key with a lot of the mail stuff that we had to deal with. And then our local police departments that neighbored around Newtown, Fairfield Police Department, Reading Police Department, and some of the other smaller police departments that were in that area.
He said
26
more than
agencies,
500
different
officers.
people on the day of and the days thereafter. My question to you, Detective, is did anyone at any time during at that time or the days thereafter have any disagreement about what happened then?
Absolutely not.
Detective, in your role as lead investigator,
500 people, that's a lot of witnesses, isn't it?
let me ask this another way.
I'm talking about people
Um,
that can bear witness for what took place that day.
Are you
It's
familiar
hard to keep a lie
with Alex
among
Jones,
500 people.
who I don't see here any longer? By the way, were you in the room today for opening statements?
I was.
Yeah,
I'm going to ask you about a
headache,
couple things that were said in those statements. But
body
you saw
aches,
Mr. Jones
and
here
then that
earlier
sore
today?
throat. The sore
Right, I
throat
don't
was
see him here
killer,
anymore. I guess he's
critters.
exited stage right. But are you familiar with who Alex Jones and his media company is?
I am.
And if you could, I don't want you to go on forever, but explain to us a little bit about your familiarity with Mr. Jones and his media company, please.
Sure. Well, Attorney Bankston actually hit on that some specific individuals that,
Your Honor, I object lack of foundation, just generally, what is your familiarity? Basis for familiarity, has he watched the show?
It's fine. Then let's do a little further exploring as to where his familiarity is.
Will do, Your Honor. Thank you. As lead investigator for Sandy Hook, did you have an opportunity to come into contact with or observe the media in and around Sandy Hook?
Y'all hear kitty dogs? She's
Yes.
playing with Bill.
One of those media personalities was that Mr. Jones and his company InfoWars.
yes,
Did it include people that came to Sandy Hook from InfoWars, such as Dan Badandi?
it did. Yes.
It included people.
Oh
such
my
as,
God, critters! I'm so
Alvin,
sorry.
someone we've heard of
Golly.
earlier.
Yes.
You've had personal involvement and had to deal with those people before as a member of the community and as a lead investigator.
Yes.
Okay, if you would please tell us what your general familiarity or personal familiarity with Mr. Jones and his company is in that context, please.
Sure. So my belief, and again, we've mentioned several names of those people associated.
Yeah,
with
fatigue
each
was
other,
really bad too.
And we've heard different names of conspiracy
But
theorists,
I'm
hoaxers,
telling
and
y'all, my sore throat
myself and
was
my team,
so
we consider them to
bad.
fall into three different groups. There was a group of individuals that usually had some extreme mental health concerns, and
I'm so
even if
sorry,
they happened to be
critters.
in
I
one of
didn't
those
know you were
classrooms during
struggling
Sandy
that
Hook
bad
and actually
still.
witnessed the
I'm so
shooting,
sorry.
they probably still
Don't
would
cry.
have
That makes me feel
believed it,
bad.
right? And they were never going to change, never be off of that. There was this middle group that probably believed some erroneous
You're sweet,
reports, and
Diane.
there were erroneous reports that had gotten out there, and they didn't have the full picture of the information, and they were being scared one way or the other. But the belief was that if they had more information, if they had gotten information like I think that Neil Heslin tried to put out, that there was a possibility that they would have recognized that Sandy Hook did actually happen and that we lost 20 children and 6 staff members. And then there was this third group, and we believe that those parties absolutely knew that Sandy Hook happened. They knew it wasn't a hoax.
Your Honor, I object to him testifying into what's in somebody else's mind, what they knew or didn't know. It's speculation.
That part of the trial has already been ruled upon, Your Honor.
So I'm gonna allow it a little bit because he is speaking specifically about his role as a police officer and what the law enforcement's that's why I'm taking this, the law enforcement's interpretation of the individuals they're dealing with.
That is what I'm asking.
Okay,
Your Honor.
but
Thank you.
personal opinions, I think, would not be treated the same way.
Thank you, Your Honor. As it concerns your experience as law enforcement, or more specifically as a lead investigator for this, continue in your
I had
understanding of who Mr.
COVID.
Jones was
Goodness.
as you saw him,
And I think
and obviously his associates.
Hi,
one
Surreal.
of the reasons
Welcome.
why we would put people in somewhat of those boxes is to help evaluate the level of threat and to see if there's any
I'm so
measures that we
sorry.
can
You're so
actually take
sick.
to either make those families safer or to give them more information so that they're not in that group anymore. And so this third group, we believe, were ones that absolutely knew that it was true. However, they were still going to use that opportunity to spin it for their own benefit, whether it was power or money, and that group was most likely the hardest one to be able to get to turn, and that they were the most dangerous. And that's where we put Alex Jones.
And sir, as it concerns Alex Jones, are you aware, speaking of these hoax and the things that have said, are you aware that Mr. Jones and his media company harassed Sandy Hook families in the days, weeks, years following
Object to the
this?
leading, Your Honor.
There's been a little bit of leading. Let's see if we can,
I'll ask it non-leading.
thank you.
Will do. Are you aware of the lies that Alex Jones and his company?
Object to the leading, Your Honor.
Well,
The
the lies are established.
It was totally
So,
leading, Your
I think that
Honor.
we can sort of make an assumption that some of this isn't leading because it's been established in the earlier stage of this case. However, you do tend to ask a lot of long questions that contain the answer. When the witness, this answer is that much shorter than the question, you're probably leading. Let's both work on
I
it.
can ask a non-leading.
I like
Just
her.
started
I
leading
like
leading
her
objections,
so
Your
much.
Honor,
All
so I'll
right,
change
I
on
know.
that.
So let's go ahead and keep going.
Are you aware of the lies that Alex Jones and his company spread concerning Sandy Hook?
I am, we, in part of our support, a large part of our support of those families were to continuously field complaints from them about harassment, hoaxers.
That's
people
so
that
sad.
they felt threatened by.
So sad.
FNPQ?
And so they reached out to us on numerous occasions. And obviously part of that then was they would explain who those people were, how that contact was made, and then if we could assist them, we would.
Were you personally aware of Mr. Jones and his media company saying that Sandy Hook was staged, quote unquote,
I was,
that it was synthetic,
yes,
that it was manufactured,
yes,
that it was a giant hoax,
yes,
that it was completely fake with actors?
yes.
In your capacity as lead investigator and in your capacity as a member of the community in and around Newtown and Sandy Hook, did you have personal experience with Mr. Jones and his cohorts as it concerns these statements that we just went over that were being made?
I didn't have any personal contact directly from Alex Jones, but people closely connected to him, Wolfgang Halbig, reached out to me on numerous occasions.
Yeah, that's
And
what I thought.
he and his
Wolfgang
team actually came
Halbig.
up to our community, and so we addressed some of those concerns, not only the fear that they developed amongst our community and amongst those family members just by their announcement that they were coming up, but then there's things that we had to do on the professional side to work with our legal affairs about what information was going to be disclosed through Freedom of Information Act, which he was also taking measures to try and get information to continue this spin of that information. So I dealt with those in a large part, and again, that's one of those things that was off the radar and unexpected to us, but not only took up a lot of our time, but was a huge part of, I think if done properly, supporting those families.
Speaking of the information that was disclosed, I want to talk a little bit about that. The information that was disclosed in the days, weeks, and year that followed the 2012 incident. Okay, sir?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to bring to you what we previously marked as plaintiff's exhibit number 27. Before I show it, put it on the board, I'd like for you to identify what this is, please.
This is a printout of our internet release of our case information. So this is our agency's response to the thousands of Freedom of Information Act requests that we had. One of the challenges that we had was how to honor those requests in a timely manner, in an efficient manner, and also in a way that would, again, going back to that very top priority of ours, what would best support the victims and the victims' families. And one of our concerns was that if we honored each one of those individual requests, that we could actually give some control of that information to whichever individual.
I'm sorry. I just want to make a comment. Um, can you imagine fighting against people who were legally like submitting paperwork to try to get photographs of your murdered child's body? Can you imagine trying to fight that? I can't even, in my mind, I can't even imagine the trauma and the horror of that. And the fact that they fought back to try to keep those things private and not be released on the internet, that was another point that was used to try to say that it never happened. That if it really happened, they'd be happy to put the photos out there. No, you would not be happy to put the photos of your deceased baby out on the internet. That's just crazy. So that's what this guy's talking about right now.
Outlet we then released it to until somebody else did a FOIA request and then got that. Until that time, they would own the context of it. And so we decided that by us actually just publicly releasing it all and having it be on our website where any fact checker could simply go to it to include the families, then it would be more difficult for somebody to spin that up and misinterpret it and own that power. So that site has everything that was not redacted through FOIA was released there. So that is thousands of reports under numerous case numbers associated with Sandy Hook. It is photos.
Yes,
videos,
Yvette, you sure
everything
can.
associated with our case that was released under those FOIA requests.
And what I've handed you there is exhibit number 27. Is that an accurate copy of a official state website from the state of Connecticut, which compiles or is a compilation of the information that you have discussed?
It is, and it's still up today. It's still accessible.
At this moment, plaintiffs would move exhibit 27 into evidence.
Any objections?
None, Your Honor.
Plaintiff's 27 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. If we could, please, let's bring up exhibit 27 on the board. So you've kind of told us this a little bit, but I want to get just a little further into it, Detective. Again, this is an actual official website of, this is not the actual website, this is a printout of it, of a compilation of all the information that you.
That's
told us
funny,
about.
Diane.
It was done by the Connecticut State Government, yes?
Correct.
Okay. If we could go to the next page.
It is very green, isn't
And
it?
we'll just flip through this real briefly. Go to the next page, please, again, Melissa. And then the next page. Thank you. Go back to the page before that. So it's my understanding, this website contains information about first responders, pictures, videos, things of that nature?
It does. It contains every written piece of documentation that we gathered, interviews.
It really
every
is
piece of
hot.
evidence. It's our complete case file.
Does that include 911 and police recordings,
It does.
dash cam footage from patrol cars,
Correct.
hours of video inside and outside the school,
Absolutely.
hundreds if not thousands of photographs,
Yes.
investigative reports, lab reports, evidence inventories,
Yes.
written reports of statements and of every responding officer that we've kind of alluded to and talked about.
Absolutely.
And tell me this, was this information available to anyone who wanted it?
It was. The public can access this directly right on our website.
All you had to do was have a computer, borrow a computer, or go to a public library and you could access every bit of this information.
Correct.
How would you best describe, based on your professional experience, the breadth and volume of information that was available on this Sandy Hook elementary school shooting tragedy?
Get vaccinated and get paid. Up to $1,700.
Right,
We are
y'all.
currently offering
Sorry
the
about
COVID
that.
vaccine, flu vaccine.
It
Your Honor,
is.
Can we specify a period? vague questions.
Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate the objection, and I will further narrow it. Let's talk about the 2012. We know it happened in December 2012. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So let's talk about the month thereafter and the year thereafter. So 2012 and 2013, when you were heavily involved as lead investigator of this tragedy. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, how would you describe, based upon your professional experience in that regard, the breadth and the volume of the information that was available concerning this tragedy?
So first, our team, my sergeant and our 6 detectives, we worked on nothing but the Sandy Hook investigation for a full year. It's the only time in my career that I've ever heard of that ever happening in the Connecticut State Police as far as being isolated onto one case. And yet these reports and these records are still generated by so many different members of those 26 different agencies. Just this information got funneled through that small team that worked on that. And the result after 1 year, because it took us about 1 year to at least get to our first time period where we could say we're going to suspend it at this point. We're going to be gathered up as much that's apparently ready for us. That final case allotment was enormous. It's the largest case file that I've ever seen, probably 20 times bigger than any other case that I've ever worked on. And being a major crime detective for quite a while, I've worked on the most major cases in Connecticut. But the case file itself is absolutely enormous.
Have you reviewed all of the information that is available and that was available in the month and year thereafter?
I did. Every report that is in there came across my desk, and I read that. There's one caveat, is that when it came to photos and videos, I've only seen some of those, and that was because we knew pretty early on that I was not going to have to go to court and testify for that, because otherwise I would have had to seen all those things as well. But just understanding the trauma that can be inflicted by just looking at and experiencing those things, I didn't see a need without this case going to court to have to see those things. But as far as every other written report and every other photo or video, which does not include some very graphic things, I personally saw.
Based on your knowledge of the information contained therein and your personal review of it, could any reasonable question have been answered with the review of this information as it concerned what happened at Sandy Hook?
Absolutely, that's
Your
why.
Honor, objection calls for speculation.
That means you can answer.
Thank you. We frequently fielded questions for the 10 years after Sandy Hook about intimate details about it, and we still go back to those same reports, those same documents, or simply point somebody to a portion of those documents to give them the answers to those information. And we break that information down into 3 categories, right? There's things that we absolutely knew for fact. There were things that we were able to develop strong theories about, and there were things such as why the shooter did it, which he never left a suicide note or a manifesto. So there's some guesses on that. But we also were very clear as far as what we clearly knew for fact, what we had some strong evidence of and some theories for, and why we supported those, and then information that we ended up just not being able to find answers for.
I just want to be clear, it was never a thought that some shooting didn't occur, right?
Unfortunately not.
I do, though, want to talk to you about some of the outrageous claims and lies that we heard about in opening that Alex Jones, his company, and his cohorts made in the month and the years following this incident, okay?
Sure.
And I've kind of got these on quotation. I took them down as Mr. Bankston was either saying it or showing a video that we witnessed during opening. So the first one is, quote unquote, men were arrested wearing SWAT gear. Your response to that, sir, as the investigating officer?
It never happened. There were individuals that were temporarily detained because, like happens in many of these things, they're trying to sneak onto the property and get photos and stuff, but no one in SWAT gear was ever arrested.
Was it even reasonable to believe that in any way?
It wasn't. It's just absurd. There was absolutely nobody else. And you can see that in our arrest paperwork. There was nobody that was arrested.
And next, quote unquote, multiple shooters chased into the woods.
Absolutely not. There was one shooter. That shooter was found dead in classroom 10 of the self-inflicted gunshot.
But they did chase someone
Quote,
into the
unquote,
woods
no
because there was video of
EMS
it.
entered the building.
But I don't know who
That's
it was.
totally true.
Maybe one of the
Not only were
parents.
some of our law enforcement personnel, not only did they have a high level of medical training, but 3 paramedics were escorted into that scene for those victims that were still there that were not immediately transported to hospitals with life-saving, to try and save their lives. So paramedics were actually escorted into that scene so that they can make official declaration on those victims.
Quote unquote, that the school had been closed for years. And
Yeah.
was not an
Just
operating
delete them,
school.
Yvette.
You know, one of the things that we did to
Thank you. Sorry
go
about
into the
that.
background of the shooter and find out that he did actually attend that school was, you know, we totally found out that school had been operating for decades. There was
And the
no
mother
stop
of
time
the
frame
Adam
in that
Lanza's
school.
mother
It was fully
actually
functional,
taught
and we
at
had
the school.
thousands of people that attended or worked in that school.
If someone were to argue the reasonableness in any increment of believing that statement, that the school hadn't been operating for years, your response to that would be?
There were numerous interviews because we went back with staff that worked in that school to see if they were just to get past behaviors and stuff. So there was numerous interviews about people, adults swearing that they were still working there, that they had worked there, all with dates and times that were clearly documented in those reports.
Kind of the last one that I've got that we were introduced to in the opening, quote unquote, the death certificates are sealed and it is a felony to possess one.
They're not sealed. There's information that certainly is sealed about this, but they are not one anybody can still access. Those are state documents.
Last one. I thought I was on the last one, but now I am. Quote unquote, rescue helicopters were not sent. Explain to us, if you could, the absurdity of that statement, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, we rarely use rescue helicopters in the state of Connecticut. The state is so small, yet we have a number of hospitals. So those that were transported quickly with ground transportation, which clearly got them there the fastest. And we couldn't have landed helicopters there initially when the threat was, you know, when it was still what we call a hot scene. So those individuals that were transported to the hospital got there by the fastest means possible, which were by ground transportation. And right at the base of Dickinson is a firehouse where EMS staged. So EMS was actually extremely close to that scene right from the beginning of this.
Let me ask you this, Detective. Did Alex Jones ever ask you for an interview of any sort whatsoever, or even request an interview of you of any sort whatsoever to clear up any of these manufactured issues that we've heard about?
No,
No phone call, no email, no letter, smoke signals or the like, right?
I never had any contact from them.
And had Jones asked you for one, well, actually, let me ask a different question.
That's a very important
Come back.
question, isn't it? That he's putting out all this information
want
and
to
never
actually now
asked the lead
focus-
detective.
Rather than generalities of these broad statements to the Sandy Hook community, I want to talk a little bit about Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis, okay? Again, you know Mr. Heslin and Miss Lewis, yes?
I do,
Come to know them pretty well over these events.
yes.
And obviously their son is Jesse Lewis.
Yes.
We've discussed a number of these outrageous lies and claims that were made by Jones and his company but are you personally aware, as the lead investigating officer and a
That's
member
that's
of the
okay,
community in and around
Yvette.
Sandy Hook, of other lies Mr. Jones and his company directed towards or concerning the Hessel and Lewis family?
I am.
Tell you what, I would like to now, this has already been pre-admitted, PVX 23. I'm going to play a subsection of PVX 23. After I play this video, which is a portion I believe we might have seen in opening, I'm going to ask you a couple questions about it. Okay, Detective?
Yes.
All right. If you would, please play that, Melissa.
He's claiming that he held his son and saw the bullet hole in his head. That is his claim. Now, according to a timeline of events and a coroner's testimony, that is not possible.
As lead investigator and a member of the community in and around Sandy Hook, Newtown, what is your response and reaction to that, Detective?
The information to us is clear. Both of their statements are correct as far as Dr. Carver explained the fact that victims families were not afforded the opportunity to go into that scene and view their loved ones for a lot of different reasons. However, families did obviously get the bodies of their loved ones released to them. So after we had gone through our investigative steps with them to include autopsies that were done by a medical examiner's office, then those bodies were then released, usually through a funeral home, to those families. And I believe that that's probably when Neil Heslin is talking about having that personal interaction with his son.
And that lie that Mr. Heslin never held his son in his arms could have been easily disproven with the information that you personally reviewed and that was available for anyone and everyone to see. True.
Absolutely.
Why was it important for you today, Detective, to be present here and offer us your testimony?
To me, it still goes back to that number one thing that we wrote on the butcher block, and that is
Let's talk about the importance of taking care of your mental health. The key to great therapy is finding a therapist you can truly connect with. I've been fortunate enough to find someone who cares for me and wants me to be my
that it's still our job to support those families in every way possible. And it's absolutely horrific, the amount of trauma that they've had to endure in the wake of having lost a loved one. Other than the shooter himself,
Your Honor, I object to this part of the testimony. I understand that Mr. Jewis is emotionally involved here, but he's not a psychiatrist, he's not a doctor. He doesn't have personal knowledge of their trauma in any way that could be helpful to the jury. I object to the speech.
All right, overruled. I think he's already testified that he does have personal knowledge.
from my experience with the families, the trauma, the heartache that they've had to deal with associated to these conspiracy theories is only second to actually losing their actual loved ones. And so I'll continue to support them any way I can. And that support just comes in the manner of telling the truth. We had consulted with a psychologist early on that really guided us through and helped us deal with families in the wake of these types of tragedy, because that's not something that I had ever experienced before, and that's not something that we had covered in training. And she told us some key things.
Oh, yes. And I mean, they
So,
completely wiped out all those videos.
Don't tell the jury things other people have told you.
For a
Just tell
while,
other people
you couldn't even
are-
find real information about Sandy Hook because there was so much
some other
conspiracy.
exceptions that may come
It was
up.
crazy.
For now, that's the basic rule. Do you want to ask another question?
Sure, I will. I'll end with this. Is supporting the family in this trial today something that was important to you, sir?
It is. Supporting the family of Sandy Hook is the most important thing that I've ever done in my career, and it's the most honorable thing that I've ever been a part of.
Thank you, Detective. I
You
don't
can
have
see
any
he's
questions
still
for you.
traumatized.
Again, I'd like to thank you for coming down here and spending
Terrible.
time with us on behalf of Mr. Heslin and Mrs. Lewis.
So
All
sad.
right, thank you. Mr. Reynolds?
Can we have we've been going for about.
No, we break at 3.
Okay, Your Honor.
Wow. It's so disturbing, isn't it? So sad.
You said that, what time did you arrive at the Sandy Hook Elementary School on December 14th, 2012?
I didn't actually go to the school itself on December 14th. I responded to the Newtown Police Department. And so at that time, there was already some survivors that were arriving. And so we as in my team that was there went immediately to the Emergency Operations Center and started our command post operations.
Object non-responsive, Your Honor. Everything after I wasn't there that day.
Non-responsive. I thought it was responsive. What?
I'm gonna overrule the objection, but I'm gonna instruct Detective just to try really hard to just answer the question you're asked, and that's it. Okay. Do you have water?
Wow, that detective is really
Oh.
nervous.
Sorry. What? That's okay. Go ahead.
Doesn't he seem nervous
There
to y'all?
were, 20 children murdered that day, you testified?
Yes.
Correct.
That is 40 some odd parents
Yes.
and 20 couples.
There were some split families, some different dynamics, grandparents that were more involved. So we're probably dealing with about 30 different type of family units.
And only 8 couples have chosen to sue over this.
Object to the form, Your Honor. How would he know that in any way? What is it relevant to this case?
So, I don't know about the form.
Yeah,
but you have not.
Maybe Sketty. That's
There's
what I
no
was.
indication that
That's
this
what I was
person has
looking at.
knowledge about that.
You
We
may be
have no
right.
background. I'm sorry.
He just seems like
It's
he's really,
speculation.
physically
Figure
distraught.
out if he knows anything about that.
You've been in close contact with families
Correct.
over a decade at this point.
Yes.
You've testified that you've spoken to them multiple times on the phone,
Absolutely.
and you still live in Connecticut.
I do. Yes.
And as
So?
you said before, Connecticut is a small state.
It is. Yes.
A couple million people?
That sounds about right.
Okay, I mean, smaller than
God,
many
why do they
cities.
ask questions like
absolutely.
that?
And when something about Sandy Hook happens, people tend to find out about it. Sure. And you particularly, because of your involvement, find out about it.
Yes.
And so you know that of the 20 some odd couples, only 8 of them have chosen to sue.
Objection, Your Honor. Again, relevance. and
It doesn't matter. It's about the 8 that are on the
speculation
lawsuit,
is
right?
Overruled. And it's tangential, but I'm going to allow it. So overruled.
That's a surprise. I can't believe
That
she
means you
did
answered
that.
the question. if you know.
I don't know how many families are involved in what particular lawsuits.
I would definitely agree,
In the
Scottie Nona.
aftermath of the massacre, who was the killer, if you know?
Adam Lanza.
And in the aftermath of Adam Lanza's rampage at the school, you testified that 26 different law enforcement agencies responded,
Correct.
and coroners came from all over.
Yeah,
to
more
help
than
out with,
500
Dr.
personnel were
Carter's
involved. Horrible
Medical
day.
examiners is what we call them in Connecticut. Yes.
from New York and other surrounding states.
There was some personnel from around New England and New York that assisted.
And there were hundreds of people at the scene.
Yes.
And that, in fact, became a problem for you in conducting your investigation, did it not?
I mean, there were many challenges. The more people you have involved, the more details you have to try and figure out.
It's true, is it not, that you,
He really does seem
Get vaccinated and get paid.
he
Up
seems
to
really bothered.
$1,700.
That's not the right word.
that you had a
He
very,
seems
I think
like
your words were, a
physically
very
he doesn't feel
disturbed
well.
scene?
Whatever the reason,
Absolutely.
he just seems
And
really
by disturbed scene,
uncomfortable.
You meant that when you tried to investigate what had happened that day, there had been so many different police officers who trampled around on it that it was very difficult to figure out exactly what had happened.
Well, I guess there's actually two interpretations of that, and they're both true. So in that sense, that the scene itself was disturbed or contaminated, absolutely. It was also the most disturbing scene that I've ever seen.
Well, and not
You'd
to
agree that this
mention
is one of the
they
most
had to
heinous crimes in our
evacuate
nation.
an entire school full of little
Certainly one of the most
kids,
heinous crimes in-
and they
or
had
the most
one
heinous crime in
road
Connecticut.
to walk them down. So I'm sure
And
there
you took
was a
your job
lot
very
of movement
seriously.
and trampling.
Yes.
Your job to preserve and document.
Yes.
And so it certainly wasn't a positive for you that hundreds of people had gone through the scene, was it?
Positive?
I'm not sure what you meant by a
Let me
positive.
change it. It didn't make your job in uncovering the truth any easier that the scene had been disturbed by hundreds of officers before it was captured.
No, it does make it more challenging.
And in a case like this, an important case, it's very important to preserve evidence, right?
Correct.
And to the extent you can, to not have evidence be handled by non-professionals.
Objection, Your Honor. Getting into a previously ruled on limites as it concerns liability, questioning whether this happened or not goes directly to the heart.
You know, I
of
just had a
lies.
thought, y'all.
What the court has already determined in liability.
I just had a thought. You don't think the poor guy has COVID, do you? Like, you think he's up there with fever? He looks sick. He didn't look like that before. He looks like something's wrong. I hope he doesn't faint.
Mayor Tom?
You may.
It is relevant for this jury to determine the degree of damages, to determine the degree of malice here, to determine whether what was done from evil purpose or was done from a genuine desire to uncover the truth.
Well, we've already discussed that that's true for one cause of action and not another. I'm going to allow some examination on this point, but not extensive. So you may continue.
Yeah, I agree, Diane. Absolutely. You think he's
Do
having
you
a smoke,
consider
needs a smoke break,
the
Cinnamon?
body
Maybe.
of the victim to be
Or he
an important piece of evidence in a murder.
maybe he's being triggered and he's
And
just having a
is it
flashback reaction.
For that body, that person, to be handled only by professionals until he or she is released to a funeral.
That's what I'm wondering, Diane.
The first priority is actually trying to provide medical attention and save lives, or stop the threat. So before we get to any investigative stuff, the top concern is that.
Objection,
So,
non-responsive.
Overruled.
so if the body is handled because of those things, then those are a higher priority.
Absolutely.
After that, though, the scene
I
should
agree with
absolutely be secured, and processing the scene should be the top priority.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
that's what I want to ask. I want you to assume that this person is deceased and you're processing the scene.
It
And so
wouldn't.
it's important that all
And let's be
professionals
clear,
handle
it's
the
not
body
just
of the
a
deceased
person.
until
It's
released
a
to the
5-year-old
public.
baby that you're doing CPR
Now,
on that's got 7
if,
bullet holes in them, right?
A non-professional handled the body of one of the children.
Oh,
at
I'm
the
sorry,
crime scene.
Voight.
Somebody who was not in the police, who was not a medical examiner, would that be important to you to know that?
Do you mean other than somebody else in that school?
Yeah, I'm saying
Just
if
not
there,
clear on
if
what you
there
mean by
was,
a
if there was,
non-professional.
well, let me ask it this way. Are you aware that Mr. Heslin has said that some member of law enforcement allowed him access to his son at the medical examiner's tent outside the school so that he could hold the body?
No.
Would that, in terms of preserving evidence in the most significant crime scene in Connecticut and potentially nationwide history, would it be important to you as the investigator to know that a victim's parent, probably good stuff, but went in and handled one of the bodies before it had been autopsied and released to the country?
Your Honor, object to the relevance of this. We are literally getting into the exact opposite of what has been said by Alex Jones and his crew, so I can't understand the relevance of this in any way.
That's what I was just
Your Honor, I
thinking.
think it is very relevant to the state of mind of the InfoWars broadcast. Your Honor has ruled that a reason, I assume that Your Honor has ruled that somebody watching that broadcast would interpret that Mr. Shore was saying that Mr. Heslin was lying. And I'm not arguing with that, Judge. You've made that decision, okay? And I'm not trying to go against your decision. What I am saying is that we should be allowed to offer that, in fact, what was intended was to dispute the quality of the investigation.
And maybe you are, but not this way, sustained.
She didn't like that, did she?
Do you believe that it is appropriate for citizens to question the official narrative of what happened?
Is it important? Is that what he
In
said?
any mass casualty event?
No, I think that's important. Transparency breeds self-correcting behavior.
Oh, I like that. That
And,
was a good statement. Transparency
What
breeds
you're
self-reported
suggesting is that by the
behavior. I like
government
that.
being transparent, which is what you try to do, we can better inform the public, right?
Correct. There's steps in place for us to be transparent.
But you certainly can't, or you're certainly not claiming that the government heard it.
Absolutely not.
And you're not saying here that you did your best, but you're not saying that this investigation is perfect.
Absolutely not.
And so it's legitimate, is it not, for people to investigate, to question, to unearth, right?
I think that's what we're used to in law enforcement.
And we've seen it now, I'm sure have you lectured on Uvalde?
I haven't talked.
Oh my gosh. Can y'all imagine
Are
what
you aware of what the
Uvalde's
first
going to
official
be
narrative
like in the
was?
coming year?
Object or object.
Wow. People are going to be doing videos all over the place. So many mistakes made.
When was your report finalized and released?
It's going to be like the Flora
What
fires.
year?
I believe it was the beginning.
Oh,
of
good night,
2006.
Sundown.
Okay, so.
Thank you for being here. I
when we say
appreciate it.
beginning, are we saying first quarter,
I believe it was the first one.
closer to April or closer to January?
In my mind, our investigation hit that first mark after a year, which would have been December of 2013.
Voight is being a trooper, hanging in
Then
there.
went to legal affairs to actually do that, that release. I believe it was, sometime close to that February 2014 timeframe, but I'm not positive.
Okay, and that was the decision was made basically to compile everything, do the
Hit the thumbs up on the way
investigation,
out,
and then
Sundown.
release it as a whole to the public. Is that how I
Thank
understood
you.
your testimony?
Sleep well.
Well, we wanted to conclude our investigation before we released anything. I don't know.
Well, let
Which
me-
is
let me ask the
reasonable.
question a different way. Did you release information about the investigation before the official release of the big report?
It was released through our PIO, so our public information officer.
In small amounts, depending on what had been requested?
Correct, for briefings and things like that.
But the vast bulk of the information wasn't available until it was released by legal sometime in the first quarter of 2014.
I believe so.
How? The report is massive, true?
It's, everybody calls the report like there's one long narrative. There's not. There's actually thousands of reports that make up our report, our case jacket.
Okay, I mean, if we brought it into this room, I mean, would the boxes almost fill up the room?
The reports themselves took about 10 5-inch binders, 4 5-inch binders.
Wow.
Now, let me ask you a little bit because you've talked about I don't know if you use the term, are you familiar with the term Sandy Hook truther?
I am.
Or the truther community?
Yes, I'm familiar with the term truth.
Now, do you know who Dr. James Fetzer is?
I hadn't heard his name until today.
Are you familiar with a book called Sandy Hook? I think it's Sandy Hook
Bill,
Never Happened or Sandy
Why don't
Hook.
you
No one
use your
died at
phone
Sandy
to
Hook.
call? Oh,
I only just recently heard about that.
That was never brought up to you by any family member?
Not that I recall.
And how about Dr. James Tracy?
I'm not familiar with him.
And how about Steve Pacheco?
No.
Did you at the time go on YouTube to let's say during this 2013, 2014 period to see how many videos there were on there talking about Sandy Hook hoaxes?
I didn't proactively search for those things, but when families would send me links of things complaining about, the process for us as the state police is I would take a look at what they were complaining about to see if there was a criminal aspect to it. And if it was something that we would handle, then we would investigate. But a lot of times it would go to the local police department because that's who has jurisdiction. Or if it was on a bigger scale and involved other states, then we would forward it to the FBI for a team that did investigations on that.
You can affirm that you became aware of hundreds, if not, I'd say hundreds of different videos that were circulating on YouTube from the truther community.
I knew there was a large amount of propaganda that was out there.
And you know that the vast majority of it was not produced by info.
I don't know. It wasn't our position to try and back trace that. It didn't have a criminal nature to it.
And talking about that, as a police officer, documenting information is very important, isn't it?
Correct.
And it's one of the first things you learn in the academy, right?
Correct.
And you want to be accurate in what you document, right?
Correct.
Because not only do you have to rely on it, but others might have to rely on it, right?
Absolutely.
You might not be available, right?
Correct.
Another officer might have to read it,
Yes.
or someone else. How many offense reports or police reports do you have from Mr. Heston and Ms. Lewis about being harassed?
I don't know a number of reports.
Fair to say you don't have it?
I'm not sure if there were reports that were done after that initial allotment, as the case was continuously open and closed, depending on new information, to include if there was anything that we actually investigated. Some of those were just simply referrals to other police departments, so they would have had the actual reports about those criminal complaints.
So you can't stand here and tell us specifically that you have a report where you can say that Mr. Heston and Ms. Lewis came to you and said, listen, this InfoWars person came and harassed me.
I can't.
I want to rewind. At the time of the Sandy Hook tragedy, there was a worldwide outpouring of sympathy, true?
Correct.
500,000 cards, drawings, letters sent into the town of condolences for the family.
I know there was an enormous amount of donations, cards, gifts in all different manners that were given to the town.
And distinguished public figures, including the President of the United States, came to Sandy Hook.
Correct.
I keep calling it Sandy Hook, actually, to Newtown.
Well, Sandy Hook is a small suburb of Newtown.
Ah, okay, I thought that was just the name.
No, Sandy Hook is
Okay.
it's a small part of Newtown.
And the president embraced, actually embraced Mr. Heston and Ms. Lewis, or at least Ms. Lewis, true?
I was busy with the investigation, so other than knowing that the president was there, I don't know about his particular actions when he was there.
And since you were there, there was a tremendous media presence,
Absolutely.
and that was all the major networks.
Again, I don't know if it was all, but there was a lot.
In at any time in 2013, did you ever see an InfoWars anything in Newtown?
Not that I recall, no.
Fair to say that in the immediate aftermath of the shooting, there were wild withdrawals. Fair to say that in the aftermath of the shooting, the news media, the national news media, made incorrect statements about what had happened at Sandy Hook.
Yes.
And fair to say that the national news media misidentified who the shooter was. Isn't it true that CNN put up a photograph of somebody other than Adam Lanza and identified them as the shooter?
Correct.
And I don't know if it was local news media or national news media, but at first there were reports that a second person was in custody because of the attack. Isn't that true?
I don't know if the reports were that it was because of the attack, as opposed to that there was somebody else that was detained. Around that time, I was obviously busy with things. I don't know exactly what the media reports were.
Fair enough. In the aftermath of the shooting and the days following, is it fair fair to say that a lot of the reporting that was done on the Sandy Hook massacre, Adam Lanza's murder spree, focused on the need to ban AR-15 style weapons?
Again, especially in that, especially those few weeks directly after the shooting, I didn't watch much TV or too much, so I don't know about the very immediate reports after the incident.
One more.
Okay.
Sorry, y'all. I was calling to check on my brother.
To save the future, we have to repair the past.
Did Megyn Kelly ever contact you about appearing on her show?
No.
So how's he doing? Is he still upset? He looks better, doesn't he? Thank you, Muffin Top.
You said earlier,
Thank
in
you,
response
Vet.
to a question by Mr. Ball, that Wolfgang Halbig was closely connected to Mr. Jones. Do you recall that testimony?
I believe that's the wording I used.
Okay, and by that, I take it you mean that he appeared on his show?
I do.
You're certainly not telling this jury that he was ever an employee of InfoWars, are you?
No, that I don't know.
Remember, this is a penalty phase. So that he's already been found
That
guilty.
man, Wolfgang Halbig, that's closely connected to Alex Jones, you're personally aware of emails and communication sent to you by Miss Lewis as it concerned his harassment, continued harassment of her and her family, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
This whole thought about that CNN put the wrong picture of someone up and it reported incorrectly who the shooter was. That was Adam Lanza's brother, picture of him, right? Because Adam Lanza had his brother's ID, right?
Correct.
They also
What
look very
objection
much
would you make?
alike.
Okay,
I can rephrase.
that's fine. Thank you.
The picture that defense counsel here talked to you about as the
Hey, Donna
wrong
Burns,
shooter.
welcome.
Remember that?
I do, yes.
Yeah, who was that the picture of?
It was his older brother. It was Adam Lanza's older brother, Ryan.
Because he had the
Still
ID
dealing
of
in
the older
misinformation,
brother.
aren't we?
Objection to the sidebar, Your Honor.
Sustained. Unless you meant that as a real question.
I did. Still dealing in misinformation, aren't we? Today in this courtroom.
I'm going to object to the sidebar again, Your Honor, but I'll take it back up on referrals.
I don't know that it's a sidebar, but I'm gonna ask you to move on to another question.
Fair enough. Thank you, Your Honor. Let me ask you this.
I got to tell y'all, I really
Questions
like
you were
this
given
judge.
about the other families and whether they had began initiating
Good night, Diane.
any
Thank
legal
you.
proceedings.
I appreciate you being
Sitting here
here.
today, you're not aware of any other families that have been specifically retaliated against other than this family sitting in this courtroom. Is that fair? By Alex Jones, that is.
I don't, I believe Lenny
He may not be
Posner
able to. Yeah, the
is through
Posners.
connection of Halbig might be somebody that I would consider. I don't know enough about the details, but that's
Yep.
that's the person that I would say might
Yep, yep,
fall into
yep.
that category.
Your personal involvement, you understand that this family was specifically retaliated against, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, I really like her, Yvette. I do.
Yeah, I guess one other question. And did
High
Mr.
Soul
Posner
Music.
file a case? The other one that you're aware of who was specifically retaliated against by Mr. Jones?
I believe so.
Thank you.
Lenny Posner took a lot of grief.
All right.
Is it in any way okay to identify somebody's older brother as a mass murderer on the nightly news?
I don't know how that initial information got to the press.
I understand, but I mean, as you sit here today, do you think that that's something that
They actually
somebody could
arrested
get
his older brother.
sued over on the press side for putting
They
out
did
the
a
wrong
perp walk
person's
with
picture and saying
him,
this person just
and it
killed
wasn't until they got to
children?
the police station that they worked out the
I
problem.
don't know enough.
Objection, Your Honor. I don't think he's a legal expert on
Sustained.
how that comes to be.
Now, when you say
Yeah,
specifically targeted,
Kathy, but it was enjoyable,
again,
right?
we're talking about Wolfgang Holiday, right?
You know how we always say no
Which
wire
places-
hangers.
yeah,
Now we
but
can
that-
say no gum in the
And I'm
courtroom.
not suggesting this isn't the truth, but when we're talking about
And I definitely want to invoke
Mr.
the
Heston
rule.
and Miss Lewis being harassed, you're talking specifically about Mr. Holiday, aren't you?
He is one of the people.
Okay, who else harassed him?
Well, I believe by what we just saw in the opening statements that Alex
Done.
Jones.
Well, let me stop here. Let me stop.
Yeah, it's getting argumentative, Judge.
You may be asked questions about which you don't actually have knowledge. It is okay to say, I don't know the answer to that.
That's right, Judge.
It's not your fault.
Invoke the
It's
rule,
probably
damn it.
lawyers trying to get something out and seeing what will happen. That's a lawyer thing. Not bad. I used to do it all the time, just play lawyer. So I'm just
It's a
saying,
Laura
you listen
thing.
to the question and you tell us what your answer is. If you have an answer, if you don't have an answer, that's what we want to know. So the question was, who else
Penny
harassed them?
was the bomb, Donna. I'm with you. She's still being the bomb.
All right.
As you sit here today, the only person that you know of that has specifically sought them out by email, telephone, or other medium based on your investigation and being a police officer in Connecticut and not based on anything you've seen in court today, is Mr. Wolfgang.
Jonathan Richards. He got in trouble for some Sandy Hook shenanigans.
I don't know that. I'm not sure.
That's fair.
2 of the Sandy
But you
Hook
can't offer
detectives
anything
paid him a visit, I believe.
Hate to put you on the spot.
Well, as I sit here today, I know that Alex Jones talked about Neil Hessen's interview with Megyn Kelly. And so
Because he was angry with Megyn Kelly.
I would
Don't
say
let
that
that get lost in
that
the
is,
mix.
uh,
It's the reason that
harassment.
God says vengeance is mine. When
Understood.
you
That's
start
what-
trying to get
that's what we want
revenge,
from
you
the
hurt
television
yourself
network.
9 times out of 10.
Correct.
No further questions.
All right, thank you. It's 2:56. We normally break from 3 to 3:30. What we're going to do today is break from 2:56 to 3:30. But this break is going to serve 2 purposes. As I discussed briefly with you at the end of the day yesterday when you were tired and probably not able to really take in what I said, you actually are going to have the opportunity to propose your own questions to live witnesses. Here's how it
Wow.
works. Waiting for you in the jury space are pre-printed pieces of paper with.
I didn't know they did
name
this
on
in
them.
Texas.
And there is enough for each of you to have one. You may not discuss with each other. If you're writing a question, what your question is, what you've heard, or anything else. The ban on discussing the case and the evidence and what you've heard continues until the very end, including during this process. You may ask question or questions if you have them. You do not have to. I'm not recommending that you ask questions. I'm not suggesting that you ask them or not ask them. I'm
They
simply
did
giving
this
you
in the
the
Jodi
opportunity.
Arias trial,
Write them
remember?
down on yourselves. Do not sign them. These are not. You'll know. I'll tell you if it has or hasn't. Until you hear from me that it has, you just assume it has not.
I wonder what they're waiting on right now. Anticipation. Anticipation is making me wait. Strange. Oh, the judge is going to get mad at them chattering.
All right.
If you're like me, you're a busy bee trying to balance work, life, hobbies, and everything in between.
All right, you may be seated. Welcome back, everybody. So what happens now, detective and jury, is I'm going to read you some questions, and you just answer them to the jury, just like they come from one of the lawyers, okay? And to the jury, thank you. Some of you may not hear a question you proposed, or it may be slightly rewritten. You can put all of that on me. These are my decisions. I decide what the questions will be at this stage.
She is
And so
loving
if
her
you're frustrated
power.
by that, at the end of this process, meaning the end of the process, I'll be happy to talk to you about it. Until then, just assume that I have a good reason for the decision I make. All right?
Yeah, just chill.
Here are the questions. How many hours or days after the shooting did you first see the scene of the crime as a police officer and as an investigator?
He saw it that day.
It was 1 week after Sandy Hook that I went to the scene, and with my team, we then did a walkthrough of the scene.
So he
In
wasn't
your
there on
experience
that
and
day.
observation,
Wow.
Did Mr. Heslin and Ms. Lewis experience greater trauma from the harassment calls and emails?
Can I ask greater trauma than?
Unfortunately, no. That is one flaw. We don't go back and forth. It's just, you just do the best you can with the question the way it's written. And if you can't or you don't understand it, you're free to tell us that as well.
I find it hard to even put myself in the shoes of a family member who's lost a loved one in this situation, especially being a parent who's lost a young child.
Objection, non-responsive.
No, that was a great answer. That was a great
so
answer.
Let me just read the question one more time. And if it doesn't work, it's okay. You can just tell us that. In your experience and observation, did Mr. Heslin and Ms. Lewis experience greater trauma from the harassment, the calls, and emails?
So I believe that experiencing that harassment on top of that unbearable is, I can't even imagine, but absolutely, I do believe that it is greater and it's extended it. It makes
That was a good question,
so,
wasn't it?
so much longer lasting.
In the aftermath of a school shooting, what, if anything, brings the most solace to a mourning family?
Answers. Accurate information.
I have found that that's individual for each one of them. Some is faith, some is just their own family and friends. When we look at it from the law enforcement side about what we can provide to help with that is, I believe it's our responsibility to provide them the truth. As harsh as
Bingo.
that truth may be sometimes.
Great
is
question. Yeah.
That it's, what we can do is fill in as many facts as possible, because
That's right.
otherwise we find that victims will have some
Imagination.
type of script of
That's
how
right.
things went in their mind, and that they'll actually they'll imagine that it's more horrific than anything actually could be.
Yeah.
And so our responsibility is to
Good. I like this guy. He knows what he's talking about.
The information
Good deal.
discussed is available through the Freedom of Information Act. When was the information available for viewing on the department's website?
I believe it was
Like
that
a
beginning
year.
portion of 2014. I know it was after we initially suspended our investigation the first time, which was 1 year afterwards. I could be wrong. It could be December 2013. It could be much later in 2014, but I do believe it was the beginning of 2000.
Yeah.
Was the information available incrementally as it was created or all at one time at the conclusion of the investigation?
Some information was put out through briefings through our PIO and other forums, but as far as the release of those reports and those photos and everything that we
It went
saw
up
in
all on the same day,
27,
or it became live on the same day.
all at once. So whenever what that release was, that happened all at once. And then if there was any other follow-up reports, because the case was open and closed with some minor stuff after that, that was continuously redacted through FOIA, and then the site was updated with that new information.
I agree,
Do
Muffin
you
Top.
know how the other families are dealing with their loss?
Again, I found that that's very much an individual, not just by family, but by family members. And that has changed and progressed over time. One of the things that our consultant, Dr. Balboni, who is a psychologist, educated us on was the different stages of grief and how we should expect these different family members to go through all those stages over time. And because they each experienced their loss in different ways, we saw them as individuals of this whole group really progress through that. Some, I believe, are much farther along in that process, and some still have a long way to go.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Detective. That concludes your testimony at this stage, and you may.
Those
exit
are
from
actually
witness
really
stand.
great questions,
May
weren't
this
they?
witness be released from the rule and any subpoenas?
Yes, please, Your Honor.
The subpoenas, yes, not from the rule.
All right. So okay, because how are you going to get him back here?
I would imagine that through plaintiff's counsel, I could arrange to do it. I don't want Mr. Jurist to have to sit here in Texas unnecessarily.
All right. So you are released from any subpoenas compelling your presence here, but you are not yet released from the rule, which means you may
The
not
rule.
have any conversations.
We
with
will
anyone about
invoke
anything else
the rule.
happens in this proceeding or your own testimony, other than the lawyers.
He's not under subpoena.
I said if, so that's fine. So does that make sense? So you are not yet released from the rule. Now, earlier I told you you'd know when I told you you were, but now you'll know when the case is over. Okay? Thank you so much for your time and your testimony. We greatly appreciate it, and you are free to go.
Go back to Connecticut where it's cool. Get out of that Texas
Another
heat.
witness for us?
Your Honor, the
It's
plaintiff's
probably
called
killing
for
the poor guy.
this time.
All right. Do you mind? Thank you, Deputy. All right, ma'am, you can come and have a seat in the witness chair, please.
We're going to invoke the rule,
There is
Yvette.
water in the pitcher and
We just don't know
glasses
what
if
the
you need
rule
to
is. We have to come
drink.
up with a
I'm asking you
rule.
to try and make yourself comfortable. You should not need to lean into the microphone unless you are extremely soft-spoken. A couple of instructions in case you have not testified before. Testifying
She
is not
looks
a
familiar.
conversation. It is a question and answer. So it's very
Is
important
she
that you not speak until the
a
attorneys have
teacher?
completed their question, that you listen to their question, and then you give us your answer. Does that make sense?
I apologize.
And if you could not talk over one another, that would help. That helps a lot with my court order. In addition, sometimes people have a tendency to answer questions with nods or uh-hums.
Uh-huh.
You can answer
Uh-huh. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Out loud
Mm-hmm.
in words so that we can get a good record. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, Mr. Bankston.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Lime green is not an authority color. That's funny. It's more of a fun kind of, are we having margaritas color, right?
All right, good afternoon, Ms. Barfova. Can you tell the jury, first, can you identify yourself for the note record?
Yeah, who are you?
Okay. And
So
I'm-
you are sort of soft-spoken. So
She's
I think
very
maybe, yeah,
soft-spoken.
move a little closer.
And if you need to, there's a microphone in front of you.
Why do you look familiar,
And then
young
can you
lady?
Spell your name, please.
DARIAKERPOVA.
Thank you.
Ms. Karpova, how old are you?
41.
You are an InfoWars producer.
Yes.
41. She looks 20.
For InfoWars. Can you
Wow.
tell me where you grew up?
Texas.
I grew up in St. Petersburg, Russia, and then in New York City.
She's from Russia.
Okay, can you tell us where you went to?
I
your
love
secondary
Vladimir.
I went
Vladimir
to Special
Putin.
College for Digital Arts, which is in Boston.
Okay, and I am going to assume that you have experience in video production.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You've been doing that at InfoWars, correct?
Uh-huh.
Partially.
Okay, and you have other jobs at InfoWars, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You have worked with Mr. Jones since 2015, is that right?
Uh-huh.
Correct.
You have managerial authority over production employees inside InfoWars, is that correct?
Objection to the. vagueness of
Interesting. The
material
plot she looks so young.
If
Absolutely.
you don't know what a question means, Ms. Karpova, you can say that. But otherwise, if you do, you can answer the question.
You think she uses oil of old age? That's funny, Muffin Top.
As of in my current position, I do.
I really like her accent, though, right?
Now,
Hello.
when you're working with Mr. Jones,
Take me
you're
to
doing
your
work
leader,
for
Vladimir
InfoWars as a
Putin.
producer. Am I correct that you were employed by his company, Free Speech Systems LLC?
The volume the size of a trash can.
Yes.
You were, isn't it correct, selected to act as a corporate representative of that company in this case, correct?
Yes, I was.
As
Seems
part
like
of
you
that
might have been set up,
selection,
honey.
You have previously provided testimony on behalf of the corporation, correct?
Yes, I was.
And when I say on behalf of the corporation, you gave testimony in which you prepared to speak with the corporation's voice, correct?
Yes.
As part of the preparation for doing that, you were tasked with making yourself acquainted with several topics of information that relate to this case, correct?
Yes.
One of those that you have had to or ordered to prepare yourself on for that testimony was an examination of the videos that are contained in plaintiff's lawsuit, correct?
I don't believe that's true.
Okay, do you remember giving a deposition
Yes.
on December 3rd, 2021?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember if one of those topics in that petition to research was the videos in plaintiff's petition in their lawsuit?
I don't remember that exact phrasing for videos. I think the topic was a more generalized question that I remember.
Sure. Apologize. We'll come back to that, Ms. Carpenter. When you prepared yourself to testify about InfoWars, one of the things you did was
She's
talk
saying,
about
I feel so sorry for her.
this case, correct?
Are you referring to the current testimony?
No, ma'am. Actually, let's focus back on your 2021 testimony.
okay, when you prepared yourself to speak on behalf of the company. In preparing to do that, you spoke with people inside of the company about the events of this case, correct?
I would say partially yes.
Well, I mean, you spoke with nightly news director Rob Dew, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
You spoke with Mr. Jones?
I did not speak with Mr. Jones.
Okay. Did you speak with an InfoWars employee named Michael Zimmerman?
Yes, did.
Do you remember any of the other people you spoke to?
I believe these were the two people that I spoke to.
Okay. And in doing that preparation, you also looked at documents inside the company, correct?
Yes,
In fact, you and I have met before, correct?
yes, sir.
And one of the things that we did when we met last time is we looked at some of those documents together, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Another thing that you did when preparing for that testimony was to view InfoWars videos, correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Some of those videos that we talked about in your deposition relate to some of the things that are going on in this case, don't they?
Yes.
I want to talk about, if we go back to, I want to use a date range with you. For these questions, I want to talk about the period between 2012 and 2018. Okay? Now, do you understand sitting here today, 2012, that December was the Sandy Hook shooting?
Yes, I understand.
Okay. And you understand that InfoWars was sued over statements made about Mr. Hudson and Mr. Lewis in 2018. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
I want to talk about during those years, the different ways you can see InfoWars. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about is that Mr. Jones does a live show, correct?
Yes, he does.
In fact, he's doing it right now, correct?
I'm not sure what he's doing.
Okay. He had a YouTube.
Your Honor, I would object to lack of foundation that she has personal knowledge of InfoWars between 2012 and when she began working there in 2015.
She was actually prepared on that for the deposition.
Right, I think that's what we're talking about.
I understand, but I think it would be up to Mr. Benson to elicit what somebody told her. She has no personal knowledge of these facts.
Well,
And she's
we're
not,
okay, right now, we're talking about her role as a corporate representative. A corporate representative is somebody designated by the corporation and tasked with obtaining all of the knowledge that that corporation has and swearing to it under oath at a deposition or in testimony. So she doesn't have to have worked there if she's been designated as a corporate representative.
I believe that's the case, Your Honor, for purposes of the deposition, but
Right.
not for purposes of her testimony here today.
Well, I'm not really sure exactly we're not there yet, so make it clear.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, I'm going
So
to track
maybe
how
if
she gained this
it's, if
knowledge.
it's personal knowledge that Ms. Garbova has just as a person, it probably starts when she went to work there. But if it's her knowledge as the corporate representative, then that's something different.
Yes, and in fact, I think one thing that would help me make it clear for you, Ms. Karpova, when I ask questions, is I may ask questions that are geared towards your personal opinion and your personal knowledge, or I may ask you what you have testified to on behalf of the corporation. Do you understand the difference between those two things?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I want to go back again to your corporate deposition and ask you again, do you remember in your corporate deposition that you were tasked with certain tasks, and one of those, the first topic, in fact, was the sourcing and research for the videos in plaintiff's petition? Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that topic.
Okay. Let's go back again to 2018 to 2012 to 2018. And those videos in plaintiff's petition span that entire time period.
Different years on videos, yes.
Okay. And during those years in which those videos were put out and those broadcasts were put out, You would agree with me that they appeared in multiple different formats, correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Sure, let's start then. You understand that some of those videos during that time period were aired as part of Mr. Jones's live show, correct?
I believe some of the videos were taken from the live show.
Another place that some of these videos come from is InfoWars' YouTube page, correct?
I'm not sure where the videos came from.
You don't remember us talking in deposition about YouTube videos?
But didn't he lose access to YouTube? I thought Infowars got blocked from YouTube.
I'll see if I can find that for you, Mr. Bowman. Let's move on to something else. Let me ask you about another one. Some of the videos that we're talking about were also carried on a radio show, correct?
I'm not sure if the videos were. I don't have personal knowledge of the videos playing on the radio show. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
One thing you do have personal knowledge of is that Mr. Jones's live show that you can see video is simulcast on radio. You understand that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, as we know, you testified earlier, some of these come from the live show, right?
Correct.
So some of them are on radio, weren't they?
If those shows were broadcasted on radio, they would have to be, but I'm not sure if they were.
Okay. But we do know that Mr. Jones' live show is simulcast on radio, correct? That's something you testified?
Typically,
Would you agree with me, for instance, the InfoWars YouTube page? You would agree with me that that was a source over the course of your career, and I'm asking you personally.
Didn't he get banned from YouTube? I don't understand these questions.
Would you agree with that?
I thought he was banned.
I would assume so.
Okay. Would you agree with me that that YouTube channel has over 1 billion views?
I'm not sure if I can agree to that because I haven't seen the statistics.
Okay, so that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Yeah, she's being very measured, Tennessee. Very careful.
Let's talk about the InfoWars website. Right?
Yeah, and like
So it's
even
not the
Apple,
YouTube page, but I want to talk about
the Apple refused to list him on their platform, right?
The videos discussed
So
in
nobody could
deposition.
access it unless they went straight to
Many,
his
if not all,
website, I
of those
believe.
videos appeared on the Infowars.com website, correct?
I mean, they severely restricted his reach.
Don't agree with that. No.
Okay. Do you agree that some of them were?
I'm not sure.
I'm
because
just. Oh, excuse me. Please finish your answer.
the specific videos in question, I would have to look at the archives of Infowars.com to see if those particular videos were posted to Infowars.com.
You would agree with me that much like the live show is typically simulcast by radio, typically InfoWars videos are hosted after the live show on the Infowars.org.
Right. Yeah, Kathy.
No, I don't agree with that.
You wouldn't agree with me that pretty much every day after Mr. Jones does a show, that there is not only uploaded to Infowars.com a full video of that day's prior day's show, but several clips from that show. You wouldn't agree that that's the typical practice of Infowars?
No, sir.
Okay. That website, Infowars.com, you've reviewed statistics relating to the view count on that website, correct?
I have not.
Do you remember seeing this in your corporate deposition? You reviewed it then?
There were a lot of documents there. I don't recall the specific page you're referring to.
Scarcova, I'm gonna bring you something.
1.5 million people have in concentration camps. Even the United Nations haven't bothered to try to rescue. Are those the Uyghurs?
Your Honor, with your permission, I'd like to publish this exhibit to the jury.
Sure.
And Christians too, I believe, right? Everybody's being really nice, Muffin Top. Yeah, I'm really appreciative.
This is analytics for the InfoWars website, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna blow up a piece of this, so hopefully the jury can see it, but I know it's in front of you. You would agree with me at the very top of, well, let's start a little bit on this document. These analytics are something that is collected by InfoWars to analyze their business, correct?
I can confirm that because I'm not responsible for that job. I'm not in the analytics department. I don't know.
So you don't know why InfoWars collects stats on how many people view its website? You don't know that?
I don't know if it does or why if it did.
All right, and on this page, which as you see here has a blown up column for page views on the InfoWars website, isn't it true that you have agreed with me that there are nearly 3 billion views, unique page views on the InfoWars website? That's correct?
That's what it says.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. You would agree with me that over the course of your career, from 2015, for instance, during that period, InfoWars was already featured on over 200 radio stations. You know that, right?
I don't know the exact number of radio stations.
Okay. Ms. Harpo, before your role as corporate representative in this case, weren't you asked to prepare to learn all the company's information about the audience reach of those videos in that plaintiff's petition?
I was asked to prepare several topics, and I consulted with the people that I thought were necessary for that, and I did the best I could collecting that information.
Okay, objection unresponsive.
Sustained.
Ms. Karpova, what I'm asking you, very specifically, is when you were being asked to prepare to testify for the company, to give information for this lawsuit, one of the things that you prepared on was the audience reach of the videos in the plaintiff's petition. That's correct?
I disagree with your premise. It's very hard to determine the reach of our audience.
Objection. Objection unresponsive.
All right, sustained. So just listen to the question and just the actual question you're asked, answer that question. Okay, so he's gonna tell you one more time.
All right, Ms. Karpova. Let's try it. Let me make sure I'm making really clear with you. I'm not asking you right now for what the audience reach is. I'm not asking you if you were able to do it to your satisfaction. I'm not asking you about any of the data. I want to know, were you tasked for this case with preparing to testify about what the audience reach of the plaintiff's petition videos were?
Yes.
You would agree with me that another place that you could see InfoWars videos is social media, correct?
Not anymore.
Ms. Karpova, do you remember when I asked you about a date range?
Yes.
Okay, and that was 2012 to 2018, wasn't it?
Yes.
InfoWars, and let's go past that date just for right now, because I want to make sure we get this really clear. All right. Let's talk about 2018 to the present. You've still been working at InfoWars, right?
Yes.
InfoWars has a social media account on Parler, doesn't it?
Yes.
InfoWars has a social media account on Getter, doesn't it?
Yes.
InfoWars has a social media account on Truth Social currently, correct?
Yes,
In fact, InfoWars has numerous social media accounts, doesn't it?
yes, it does.
So let me ask you this. And InfoWars has a burgeoning website. A lot of people come and visit the InfoWars website, even currently. Correct?
Again, I don't know the statistics.
And InfoWars has a website.
Yes, it does.
It has access to the internet.
Yes.
Yep, that's something it still has. In fact, there are many InfoWars employees who have social media accounts.
Correct.
Some of those accounts are on things like Twitter, Facebook, things like that, correct?
I'm not sure about Twitter or Facebook.
Those places, the company's social media accounts, those are places where people can see InfoWars videos from time to time, isn't it?
Are we asking about the personal social media accounts, or are we asking about company?
I just said the company's social media. Correct? You can see videos on the company's social media accounts, correct?
The
No,
ones that you,
he got blocked.
Okay.
other than Facebook and Twitter.
Okay, so the company still has social media accounts, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the company has a website where you can watch InfoWars videos right now, doesn't it?
I believe the website is mostly article driven. Infowars.com.
If I go to Infowars.com and I hit ban.video, I'm looking at a huge archive of videos, aren't I? That's updated every single day, right?
You just mentioned a different website.
If you go to Infowars.com, one of the sections of that website, up at the top, with news, featured articles, other stuff, is ban.video. Click here for video, isn't it?
You're talking
He-
about band.video, but you're asking me about.
All right, let's
He
not speak
he
about
should
it.
not
Let's
be
not speak
so rude to
about it.
her.
The Infowars.com website provides
That
a
could
link
alienate the
at very top
jury.
of the website to another, I guess, web domain that is also owned by Mr. Jones and Free Speech Systems that provides video content daily on the internet, correct?
Yes.
So if
Yeah, I
somebody
worry about
wants
that,
to
Kathy
say
R. That's really the reason I
that
wanted to
InfoWars
watch
has
this.
had all of its access to the internet taken away and lost its ability to post on all social media, that would not be true, would it?
It's essentially pretty true what they
Not
did.
entirely.
Parlor
Excuse me, I'm
is
sorry, I didn't
Not
new.
entirely.
That's not an entirely true statement, is it? Right? If someone was to say that, that would not be an entirely true statement.
I would say. For the
Yeah,
most part,
very
it's true.
apprehensive, Donna.
Okay, well, what I'm asking you.
She's
is
probably
something
trying
I've
to keep
heard
her
earlier
job,
today,
right?
The opening statement is this right here. InfoWars has lost its access to the internet. InfoWars
Yeah.
has lost its social media accounts. If those things were said, that's not true.
It is true. Okay. All right. So, just for conversation's sake, when all of this happened, they ended up because Alex Jones, I don't know if it was related to Sandy Hook or if it was related to the presidential election. I don't remember. But the first thing they did was obviously take him off of Twitter. And then they killed the YouTube channels. And then the big one was when they had him removed from Apple and from the app stores, like on the Android app stores. Remember that? So even he still had his website. He could put whatever he wanted up on the websites, but at the time, no, he had no way to advertise like his new videos and such. He had no way to put those out to new people. So the people that were like really, really big fans, they knew how to go to InfoWars to watch his stuff. But it wasn't going out to any new people. And that actually drives a lot. Like, if I don't put my videos and stuff up on Twitter, I get about half of the views I would normally get. So I get, her hesitancy, he's trying to say now, well, there's Parlor and there's Getter, but Parlor and Getter, they weren't even a thing back in that time. Remember? So it's kind of strange what he's doing. And here's my worry about that. You run the risk of alienating the jury if you are viewed as not being honest, or if you seem like you're, harassing a young woman who's really soft-spoken. And I honestly don't think he's in a position that he has to do those things. I think the jury is sympathetic to the families, and I don't think I don't think they have to do this, and he may make a jury member angry if he's not careful.
InfoWars has not lost its access to the internet. InfoWars has not lost the entirety of its social media. Correct?
I believe it was referring to the audience reach. The new social media platforms that have come up since the deplatforming have a fraction of the viewership.
Absolutely.
The previous platforms did, which
That's
now
right.
it's no longer offered.
Let's just talk about what you mean when you say deplatforming, right? InfoWars, shortly after the filing of this lawsuit, lost its YouTube page, correct?
Yes.
And it did so, that happened because of repeated community violations of YouTube policy, correct?
I don't know that.
Okay, you don't know how you lost the YouTube site?
I object on calls for speculation as to.
Come on. Yeah, but everybody knows they're controlling
Your
messaging.
objection, calls for speculation, is overruled. She said she doesn't know. You can try to get
I'll try
to
to
it
get
another
this.
way.
Did YouTube send anything to the company notifying it why its accounts have been canceled?
I don't know because I was not.
That's not her role.
Okay, that's fine. The other thing that happened to InfoWars is that it lost its Twitter page, right?
Yes.
And I believe its Facebook page.
Yes.
Okay. And that's what you mean by deplatforming, right?
That
Yeah.
and a few other
The app
platforms.
stores.
So that's it. That's what we're talking about. InfoWars lost a few platforms.
A
Didn't
few.
deny access to the internet.
He
Doesn't
should not
ban
be
from all
doing
social
this.
media.
I'm
You
telling
agree?
y'all.
I wouldn't agree with that because we're talking about the audience reach and the platforms
Yeah.
that was banned from encompasses most of the audience, most of the internet.
Really? You're going to testify here under oath, Ms. Karpova, that the audience from InfoWars YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook page is greater than Mr. Jones' live show, radio show, Infowars.com, and the banned video archive. That's your testimony under oath today?
I don't know how it would compare because I don't have the numbers.
Okay, in the future, I want you to testify that way instead of saying that it would, right? Because what I want is your personal.
Objection, Your Honor, to the instructions.
Wow.
She can ask questions, she can answer.
I'll sustain that, but I am going to say that you need to restrict your answers to things that you know, right? Whether you are asked a question as an individual or as a corporate representative, you have those two roles.
They should not be
You have
bullying
information
this
in each of
girl.
those roles. It's not helpful to the jury to guess or assume.
It's not gonna turn out
Thinking about
well.
buying a policy, but unsure if we have unreasonable fine print or
So you need to only testify about things you know. Do you understand? Okay, thank you.
During the time in which you've been employed by InfoWars, both personal knowledge, let's do it first.
I
personal
agree,
knowledge.
Kathy.
Actually, scratch that. Let's do it backwards. In getting prepared to testify for this company, to be its corporate representative, you became aware when preparing for the topic of audience reach that InfoWars has been carried on several cable packages, correct?
Yes.
Same question about your preparation. You also became aware that InfoWars was carried on shortwave radio, correct?
Yes.
And that's a worldwide Christian radio, isn't it?
I'm not sure what radio that is.
Okay. And you know what Genesis Communications Network is, right?
Yes.
Okay. Genesis Communications Network is an entity by which InfoWars is broadcast on a bunch of radio stations. Isn't that right?
I can't speak to the distribution of Genesis Radio Network.
So in other words, when you got prepared to testify in this case about audience reach,
I don't know,
videos
Muffin.
broadcast and things, how far it gets through Genesis Communications Networks, that's not something you can tell the jury.
I don't have that information.
When getting prepared, one of the other things that you knew InfoWars was carried on is OTT boxes. Isn't that right?
Wonder what OTT boxes are.
I don't recall that specific topic of research for in preparation.
Let me see if this may help you understand, because I used an abbreviation. And do you remember in our prior discussions with each other talking about over-the-top box systems? Boxes that are put on top of a TV and plugged into it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay. And InfoWars has been on those, right?
Is that like
Okay, so that's a yes.
is that like a
And this time
Roku?
period we're talking about?
Maybe they're talking about like Roku.
Again, I'm not sure about the time period.
Okay. One of the other ways that you're fully aware that I could see InfoWars content is that InfoWars content is republished by a variety of different people, correct?
Yes.
In fact, InfoWars programming is what we call free to air, right?
Yes.
Okay. And when we say free to air, that means that anybody can take one of Mr. Jones's videos in which he advertises his products, and without paying InfoWars a dime and without signing any kind of agreement, they can broadcast it wherever they want to, correct?
Yes.
And they frequently do. There are people who do that, right?
I don't know how many people do that.
I'm not asking you how many. The company is aware, and you were aware when getting prepared to talk about audience reach. You were aware that people do, in fact, republish InfoWars content. That's allowed.
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk to you next, Ms. Karpova, about during that same period of time, 2012, 2018. I want to talk to you about the ways that InfoWars made money, okay, how the business operated. First of all, advertising. Is that something that InfoWars made money off of?
Could you be more specific?
Sure, I'll give you one example. You know what Rev content is, right? Those little click boxes that were for a long time at the bottom of InfoWars web pages.
Don't know about them. That's not my specialty.
So, in other words, let me put it this way. In your role as a producer for InfoWars, right, you do not encounter the advertising modules on the website? Is that what you're saying?
Not typically.
Okay. And then in terms of the videos, in terms of video production, over the course, and let's back up for a second. As a producer, you have worked on multiple InfoWars shows, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and one of those would be the Alex Jones show, right?
Yes.
On the Alex Jones show itself, during the time in which you were producing that show, you personally, there was advertising on that show, correct?
Could you be more specific on the advertising? The type of advertising?
No, all I really want to know is, during the entire time of your career, was there ever advertising on InfoWars?
Yes.
Okay. So in advertising is one of the ways that InfoWars makes revenue, correct?
Yes.
Another way that InfoWars makes revenue is the sale of its products. You know what I mean by that?
Yes.
I wonder why he's going through
InfoWars
all
has
this.
a website where it runs a store, right?
Yes.
That store sells a variety of different products, right?
Yes.
One of the types of products that store sells is herbal supplements, right?
Yes.
In fact, there are a variety of different supplements, some not using herbs, right, but others using elements like iodine.
Yes.
There are a variety of different pills that can be purchased on InfoWars that purport to give health benefits. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
there is a variety of materials, would you agree with me, that are geared towards those who are prepping for emergency situations?
Yes.
That would include, for instance, tubs of prepackaged food, things like that,
Yes.
water filtration systems,
Yes.
AR-15 parts.
I don't need a
AR-15?
You know,
What?
what made refresh Rebecca memory? Do you remember InfoWars selling a branded,
Oh, a bump
engraved
stock.
InfoWars AR-15 receiver on its website?
I'm sorry, I just can't recollect that specifically.
Okay. In other words, there are a large variety of products for sale on the InfoWars website. It's not just one kind of product. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
InfoWars also has an Amazon.com store, correct?
Oh, I think so.
Okay. Has an eBay.com store too, doesn't it?
I don't have any knowledge of eBay.
Okay. Would you agree with me? I don't know. Do you have the knowledge to know? This sale of the products off InfoWars website, that's the primary method of revenue for the company, right?
Off of InfoWars store, yes.
Okay. Ms. Karpova, I want to turn now, and we're probably just going to start to get into it today. I'm just going to let you know for your own convenience and for everybody important. We're going to have to keep going until tomorrow. But I want to talk just a minute
She's like, what?
about
No.
the start of the coverage of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting on InfoWars. Okay? And so what I'm going to want to do is talk to you a little bit about some of the videos in plaintiff's petition and some of the documents that we've talked about before. And do you remember, sitting here today, you can verify for me, that on the day of the Sandy Hook shooting, as the news was coming in of the Sandy Hook shooting, InfoWars was broadcasting that day, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Ms. Karpova, one of the things that I'm going to bring you right now that I think might be helpful is I am going to bring you what's been previously marked as Plaintiff's Exhibit 31. I'd like you to take a look at that.
I feel stressed out.
Okay, and we can see here
It's almost
together
over,
what
y'all.
This exhibit contains is dates and titles of episodes. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I will represent
About
to you
30 more minutes. Maybe we should hurry it up a
exhibit.
little.
Objection, Your Honor, is that if the jury were allowed to watch the entire video at this point, it would be apparent that Mr. Jones is.
So you are free to play the rest of the clip during your time if you would like to.
In that clip, we heard Mr. Jones talk about a patsy. Did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
A patsy is the fake perpetrator of a false flag who takes the fall. Do you agree with that? That's what a patsy is.
Information on this subject, but get a hold of your cousin when she settles down and get her to talk to us for any other information. We need to know, were there any drills that day or the day before? Does she know that? Did she have anything about other shooters, or was it that she never saw the shooters?
Well, I had to ask them if it was supposedly too, because they have a lot of security at that school. You have to ring a doorbell in order to get into the school.
Yeah, of course, which is another side of that, yeah. It's one of these federal model schools.
The thing that just scared the daylights out of me, I had a call right away, is I asked them, did they ever train for this? And my uncle said yes. Within this school year, since September, they have trained for incidents like this.
Well, that in and of itself isn't the proof of it, but they could use a drill to then bring in a patsy Well, it could just be a Prozac hit. We'll find out. God bless you, sir. I appreciate your call. Stay in contact. We're going to go to Rob, who says email.
Your Honor, I would object under the rule of optional completeness to just the video clip being played and ask that the entire segment be played.
Your Honor, that the rule of optional completeness is when the defendant can identify a statement in the offered matter and then identify a specific statement that would make it, you know, so I just object that that's improper.
Yeah, so that you are free to admit the entire clip, or excuse me, video. In fact, it's already admitted, as you know. And so if your objection is to the playing of just the clip, we handled that in pre-trial, and your objection is overruled.
My objection, Your Honor, is that if the jury were allowed to watch the entire video at this point, it would be apparent that Mr. Jones is.
So you are free.
If
to
she
play
has
the
already
rest
ruled
of
on it,
the
it's a
during
moot
your time if you
point.
would like
At the end of this episode, or the end of this clip we just watched, Mr. Jones, did you hear him talking to the viewers and saying, "Send me your tips"? Did you hear that?
Yes.
Okay. InfoWars solicits tips from viewers through an official tip email address, correct?
Yes.
InfoWars frequently uses third-party material that is submitted to the show, correct?
Sometimes.
Right, and Mr. Jones was just encouraging them to do just that, right?
Yes.
And one thing we can agree on is on the day of the shooting,
But there's nothing wrong with that.
while we were still learning what was happening up there in Connecticut, Mr. Jones was already theorizing that this was a false flag, correct?
Wow, that's getting so dangerously close to making a thought a crime.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
On the day of the shooting, first, and I think it may help for you to look at the title of the episode, on the day of the shooting that's in front of us. On the day of the shooting, while we were still learning what was happening, Mr. Jones was already publishing videos that was making the claim, that was publicizing and spreading the claim that this might be a false flag, correct?
This is so complicated, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
I think that's a good place
Let's go, Provo.
to stop for tonight. This is very complicated because you can't, people's thoughts, if you put out content that is noted as speculative in nature, or that you're doing an opinion piece, you express questions about something that you feel uncomfortable with, that is not the same thing as saying definitively Mr. Heslin is a crisis actor. That would be considered slanderous if you had knowledge that that wasn't true. But to take the facts of a newly developing story and discuss the facts and sort of brainstorm and talk about what might, what could actually be happening, that is not against the law, right? No, nor is it immoral. So, very, very, very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. All right. Let's see where we're at. This video is getting very close to being. Let's move forward. I'd like to kind of finish this tonight, and then we can pick up with day 2 tomorrow.
On December 19th, 2012, believe. You going to testify to that under oath?
More than 21 million travelers each year trust us to
Are you gonna testify that you don't?
Hang on. No, it does not. Does she have personal knowledge that they believed it? She might not. Overruled.
Yes.
Okay, so you know personally who produced this, right?
I don't.
But you're going to tell us you have personal knowledge that whoever it was knew it was true or believed it was true?
That's how we do things. We report on things we believe. In all my experience in college.
Okay, so this is just your inference based on how you think InfoWars operates. Is that correct?
Yes.
Let's move forward a couple days. December 21st, 2012. Now, we're now just a couple weeks after the shoot. And you'll agree with me on that date. InfoWars published a video called Part of Gotham, renamed Sandy Hook in Dark Knight film. Correct?
Lower part of
Okay, yes, sure. Lower part of Gotham, renamed Sandy Hook in Dark Knight film. That's the title?
Yes.
This is, again, talking about the coded Illuminati message in the Batman movie, right?
Yes.
Again, just a matter of weeks after the shoot, correct?
Yes.
Let's go just past Christmas. New Year turns over, and it's January 10th. It's been just less than a month since the shoot. On January 10th, 2013, InfoWars produced a video that day, correct?
Yes.
And that video was entitled Professor Claims Sandy Hook Massacre MSM Misinformation, right?
Yes.
The MSM, that means mainstream media, right?
Yes.
And InfoWars likes to view itself as opposed to big like CNN, right?
I'm actually against mainstream media.
And it was here that a professor was brought on to claim that the public was being given misinformation about Sandy Hook, correct?
Yes.
That professor is Professor James Tracy, isn't
I believe so.
he? And he was interviewed about his claims about crisis actors, wasn't he? A crisis actor, you would agree with me, has two different meanings, right? Would you agree with that?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Just checking. Okay, so would you first agree that for many years there have been organizations where they will have actors who will help participate in a crisis drill, where if there was, say, like a police officers who are training for a mass crisis and they need to learn how to put on the tourniquets, there are people you can pay to be actors in that crisis to help them train. You understand that that's a thing?
Yes.
You also understand that in the conspiracy world, that when someone says crisis actor, that can also mean that a person is being paid to play a role in a faked event. You understand that, right?
That is what it means. Yeah,
Sure,
they get
might do it
paid.
for free, won't they?
No, they
Could be a
get
lot of
paid.
reasons they could do it.
I'm not sure.
Sure, but let's go ahead and make it simple. A crisis actor is someone who is in a fake event pretending to be something they're not. Correct?
Yes.
And InfoWars, less than a month after the shooting, was already recruiting people like Mr. Tracy to come on the show and have him on to talk about crisis actors. You agree about that?
I would disagree with that.
Okay. And is your problem with the word recruit?
Yes.
Okay. Let's try to say the simple part. InfoWars asked Dr. James Tracy to come on the show, right?
I'm not sure if he was asked or if he wanted to go on the show. He
Sure.
wanted to.
Okay, so one of two things happened. Either James or Tracy got a hold of InfoWars and said, I want to be on the show. And InfoWars took a look at him and what he was saying and said, sounds good. Or InfoWars went to James Tracy and said, hey, we've seen what you're saying. We want you on the show. One of those two things is probably what happened.
Yes.
And that was less than a month from the shooting that InfoWars was actively promoting the idea on its show that crisis actors were used at Sandy Hook. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree with that. I think InfoWars was gathering evidence that they could find, whether it was for it being some sort of event where government was involved, and also was looking for the opposite. Just gathering information.
Let's move forward 5 days. January 15th, 2013. InfoWars published.
Hi, Alma. Welcome.
Sandy Hook AR-15 hoax? Still no school surveillance footage, correct?
Yes.
Let's move forward just another week or so to January 27th, 2013. InfoWars published a video at that point called Why People Think Sandy Hook is a Hoax, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Karpova, I would like to hand you what's been marked Plaintiff's Exhibit 48. If you remember seeing this email in your deposition, correct?
Yes.
This email relates to the events of this case. Do you agree with me with that?
Yes.
Concerns Sandy Hook
Yes.
and a parent's complaint. Correct?
Could you just give me a second to
Sure,
read
you
it?
can read the email. Not yet.
Let's talk about the importance of taking care of your mental health.
Thank
The
you,
key to
Alma.
great therapy
Only
is finding
because
a
you guys
therapist
are
you can
awesome.
truly connect with. I've been fortunate enough to find someone who cares for me and wants me to be my best self. And BetterHelp can help you find your perfect match too. Therapy can be intimidating, and not knowing where to start stops a lot of us.
Long email.
Your Honor, at this time we've moved to admit Plaintiff's 48.
Any objection?
Your Honor, the bottom half of the email contains a hearsay statement from.
Okay, that's all you have to say. I know you gave me the notebook, but for some reason, we only put the depositions out here. I'll ask my staff to look for the notebook that I know you did give me. But do you have another copy?
I sure do. I
Look
have
at
it right
right
off
now.
number here, but I'll be happy to. And going forward, I'll have them ready to go.
I think we have it.
Would Your Honor like to see my?
I'll just need to see a copy. We'll let Mr. Hanson do it. I wasn't here in the building all last week, so that's why I don't have my notebook up here. It's not anyone's fault. I mean, it's my fault. We can make it my fault. Okay, let me just look at it. All right, so here's the objection to the second half.
To the, let's say the original,
Okay,
sorry, to the original message. It's been-
all right. And your response is that it's not offered for,
Not offered for the truth. Those facts are already established. It's offered to show notice to InfoWars that it goes to their actual homes.
so I'm gonna overrule the objection. Plaintiff's 48 is admitted.
Thank you. Ms. Karpova, you have a copy of 48 in front of you, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Your Honor, I'm going to publish 48 to the jury.
All right,
Let's start with Lenny's and zoom in on Lenny's part.
I wonder if we're going to get to see it or hear it.
We see an email here from a gentleman whose inbox says Lynn Posner and his signature line says Lenny Posner. You're aware that Lenny Posner is the father of Noah Posner, a victim of Sandy Hook.
Yes.
In fact, you've done research regarding Lenny Posner, you personally.
Personally, have not.
Okay, well then maybe that's, for the purposes of your corporate deposition, you fulfilling that role did research on Lenny Posner.
Yes.
of the things that you know about Lenny Posner is that he was upset with the way Infowars was covering this story. You know that, right?
Yes.
Okay. I want to read you this email here, and this is written to writers@infowars.com, and Mr. Posner writes to Alex. And he says, Alex, I'm very disappointed to see how many people are directing more anger at families that lost their children in Newtown, accusing us of being actors. Haven't we had our share of state pain and suffering? All these accusations of government involvement, false flag terror, New World Order, etc. I used to enjoy listening to your shows prior to 12-14-12. Now I feel that your type of show has created these hateful people, and they need to be reeled in. Lenny Posner. I read that correctly?
Yes.
All right, I'd like to show you the response. Can you zoom that up for me? It's from Paul Watson. You know Mr. Watson,
Yes, I do.
editor at Infowars.
Yes.
You would agree with me that over the years, Mr. Watson did not like what other people at Infowars were doing as it concerned himself. Do you agree with that?
Correct.
Mr. Watson wrote back to Mr. Posner, and he said, Sir, we have not promoted the actors thing. Let's start there. You would agree with me that just days before this, Infowars had Professor Tracy on to promote the actors thing. You would agree with that?
Promoted, I would say speculating,
Okay.
looking for answers.
And Mr. Watson then says, in fact, we have actively distanced ourselves from it. That's not true, is it?
I'm not sure who's Paul Watson speaking for here.
Sure, but I don't care who you're speaking for. It's not true, is what I'm saying. When he says we, you assume, we can assume he means Infowars, right? You know that.
Yes.
And it's not true, is it? Infowars hadn't actively distanced itself from the actors thing. Quite the opposite. Correct?
Well, I think Alex was looking for answers.
Object. Object non-responsive.
Sustained.
Ms. Karpova, what I'm asking you is when you bring on to promote to an audience of millions, when Infowars brings a person on whose theory is that the parents are crisis actors, that's not actively distancing yourself from the actors thing, is it? Let's talk about March 27th, 2013, just a little bit further.
Are you moving off of this exhibit?
I am. Yes, we can take that down.
It's
In fact, if you wanna-
4:58.
I
I
think
think
that's a good idea.
this is a good breaking point for the day.
I would agree,
Um,
genius judge.
So for my jury, please remember all of my previous instructions, including the ban on news.
And we've invoked the rule. Don't forget.
All right. We
The
will
rule
start
is
at 9.
invoked.
I do need my jury to get here by about 8:45 so that we are able to start on time tomorrow. Thank you so much for your excuse for the day. Ms. Karpova, you can go back down to the main part of the courtroom. Thank you. You'll just shut the door behind you, please. You may be seated. Do we need anything else on the record? All right, we can go off the record. Couple of things.
Okay.
Mr. McMillan, I'm gonna.
All right,
ask you
they're
not to
done.
move On the
Ooh,
bar between.
That was a
yourself
long
and-
one. You guys are troopers to sit through that. It wasn't exactly exciting, but it's actually very important what's happening. I don't think we can. I think if we go to a place in this country where having thoughts, having opinions is going to be criminalized, we could end up in trouble. But on the other hand, too, you can't just blatantly construct lies in order to sell your story, regardless of what the reason is. I mean, you may be one of these people, on YouTube who's trying to cover up your own bad behavior. You get together with a couple of people, construct a big giant lie to say, oh, everybody else is lying but us. Again, based on this case, you're going to be able to be hauled into a criminal court with real damages. So it's a really important case in terms of what will be able to be said on these YouTube channels. It's really important. People are obviously not watching. They are not paying attention to this, and they really should be, because whatever's decided, it's going to have a big impact on us and what we can legitimately get away with, on our channels. So thank y'all for being here. Y'all are amazing and awesome. It is almost midnight where I am, and tomorrow's Monday. So I am going to go ahead and end this night, not because I want to, because I have to. I hope you guys sleep well and get lots of good dreams in before the morning. And then we'll meet back tomorrow night, and we'll do day 3, right? Yeah, we'll do day 3 tomorrow night. Okay? All right. Well, y'all are awesome. Thank you so much. And I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow. All right. Here we go. Stop sharing. And you guys have a good evening. Okay? Bye-bye.